Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the APRU Metagame Conference of 2022. We are glad that you are joining us on the second day of the Digital Entertainment Leadership Forum, also known as DELF, hosted by Cyberport, Hong Kong. To our honorable guests and online viewers, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am your co-host of the day, Trevor Nguyen, alumni of the University of Washington and the APRU Esports Fellowship Program. The Metagame Conference of 2022 is hosted by the Association of the Pacific Rim Universities, or APRU, in partnership with Cyberport Hong Kong and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Thank you, and I shall pass the virtual microphone to my good friend James.
I am James Yun of the University of Science and Technology, and also co-host of today's Metagame Conference. We thank the partners of the APRU Metagame Conference, including Adidas, Moonlab, Next 10 Esports, Planet 9, and all of the APRU universities that lead the APRU Esports program. We also thank all who contributed to the development of this conference, including the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Nanyang Technological University Singapore, National University of Singapore, Overwatch, Salix Education, Tecnológico de Monterrey, the University of British Columbia, the University of Hong Kong Space, University of Hawaii at Manoa, Universidad de Chile, University of California, Los Angeles, University of Southern California, Voice for Intercollegiate Esports, and Zhejiang University.
We will have an exciting program today, which will feature policy discussions on the emerging esports hub of Hong Kong and covering important topics related to edutainment, collegiate esports, and the gamification of social well-being. Welcome to the range of distinguished speakers coming from Hong Kong, Mexico, Singapore, Korea, and the USA. Today's program will also feature the finals of the APRU Rampage Invitational Tournament and a special announcement about the Student Digital Art Contest, Level Up Our World.
We encourage you to actively participate in the conference by simply scanning the QR code shown on the screen to ask questions and to interact with our speakers today. And also don't forget to share your experience on social media and tagging us at hashtag DELF 2022 and at APRU 1997.
To kick off today's event, we invite Dr. Christopher Tremuan, Secretary General of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. As a network of leading research universities linking the Americas, Asia, and Australia, and the Pacific, APRU is the voice of knowledge and innovation for the Asia-Pacific region. It brings together thought leaders, researchers, and policymakers to exchange ideas and collaborate on effective solutions to the challenges of the 21st century. APRU is also the only university network spanning the Asia-Pacific Rim that works with students to cultivate an active and engaged community to lead the future of esports. Dr. Tremuan, please.
Welcome to the APRU Metagame Conference, held in partnership with Cyberport Hong Kong and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. I am grateful to our host, Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Cyberport, for including this international conference as the spotlight event of the DELF Forum. Esports is one of the strategic pillars for Cyberport. So we are building a strong partnership between APRU and Cyberport for the development of the esports ecosystem in Hong Kong and in the Asia-Pacific region. Cyberport has supported the APRU Esports Fellowship Program by offering students access to the industry through workshops, internships, and entrepreneurship opportunities, as well as partnering on the Metagame Conference for the last 3 years. APRU established our International University Centre at Cyberport early last year. The centre provides an opportunity for all 60 APRU member universities from around the Asia Pacific to work with over 800 startups and technology companies at Cyberport. We brought our international network to Cyberport to help empower innovative talent and develop the industry. During last year's Metagame Conference, our members presented a variety of perspectives on the esports ecosystem emerging from policy discussions, next generation learning, and gaming and competitions. The keynote address then by Mr. Sam Barrett from the United Nations Environment Programme provided ideas on ways the gaming industry could support the global environmental agenda. As a network reaching over 2 million students from 19 countries and territories, APRU highlights the opportunities for students in the universities to gain new knowledge and skills. Students are already innovators in creating the esports ecosystem and are often highly talented leaders. Their wide-ranging activities include competitions, educational programs from the sciences to the humanities and social sciences, research into the industry and its social implications, its potential for social well-being, and for problem-solving global challenges. Programs for diversity as well as educational pathways to other careers are also key features. Employees are increasingly interested in the skills that are required through team decision-making under extreme pressure, while scientists want to know how the brain functions under these circumstances. As a team sport, has many spin-offs for how we relate to each other. Esports can also be a gold mine of prize money for high-achieving individuals, but these are comparatively few. Also, the business model is still in its infancy, and the professional life of top players is usually short. Even the technology itself is in the early stages of development, despite the punch it delivers currently. So we face the challenge of how we develop sports, esports, as a sustainable industry with a better career trajectory and opportunities in related areas. How do we ensure diversity and equity among those who play and elevate it above any toxicities? In short, as universities, we want to contribute to building the esports ecosystem. As an international network, we want to increase the connectivity across borders among students, researchers, and administrators. We face many common challenges, and we believe that building socially committed learning communities around esports will be for the common good. These are some of the issues this conference will discuss today. We need to partner with business and government to encourage, develop, and also regulate this transformational way of interacting. We in APRU are very ambitious about shaping a positive future for esports and its contribution to society. We are also very ambitious for our partnership with Cyberport. And to this end, I thank Mr. Peter Yan and Cyberport again, and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary with the launch of its twin campuses in Guangzhou and Hong Kong and the Metaverse. A special thanks to Professor Wang, Vice President for Institutional Advancement at HKUST, for providing his insights in the keynote address today. I also express our thanks to Next10 Esports, as well as all APRU members who are actively supporting our esports program today. I wish you all an enjoyable time at our Metagame Conference. Thank you.
Thank you for that lovely speech, Dr. Tremuan.
We now invite Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Cyberport Management Company, to share his welcome remarks. Mr. Peter Yan is the Chief Executive Officer of the Hong Kong Cyberport Management Company Limited. As the CEO of Cyberport, Mr. Yan leads the digital technology flagship to focus on fostering talent cultivation, industry development, and integration of new and traditional enterprises to realize Cyberport's vision to create new impetus for Hong Kong's new economy through digital technology. Mr. Yan, please.
Good morning, Dr. Tremuan, Secretary General of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. And to our virtual audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the world you are. Welcome to the APRU Metagame Conference. Cyberport is delighted to co-host this fantastic event for the third time. Since 2020, the Metagame Conference has been a spotlight event of our annual Digital Entertainment Leadership Forum. Just yesterday, we spent an entire day exploring the world of metaverse entertainment, esports, arts, and sports technology. Today, we'll continue that journey by diving deep into education in the metaverse. Education, especially online education, has much to benefit from the metaverse. From engaging students in edutainment experience to providing teachers with real-time data to make their teaching more effective. The metaverse holds the promise of enhanced learning and teaching in profound new ways. We are on the cusp of an era of digital transformation in education, where opportunity is limitless. I'm sure today's discussions will yield many exchanges that will not only inform, but also inspire. At Cyberport, we cultivate talents and startups through a vibrant innovation and technology ecosystem consisted of knowledge institutions, leading enterprises, government, service providers, investors, etc., and help entrepreneurs turn ideas into reality. Among Cyberport's 1,800 plus startups and tech companies, we have hundreds of companies focusing on digital entertainment, esports, metaverse, and education technology. Their innovation spans across GameFi, art tech, sports tech, NFT, and other emerging domains, providing individuals and businesses with various ways to achieve more, both in the metaverse and in real life. Many are utilizing 5G technology too, to realize the metaverse massive synchronous online experiences. Our work is no better illustrated by one of the panelists in the first panel today, Professor Paul Lee, the co-founder of APRU. Paul first participated in the Cyberport University Entrepreneurship Program as a PhD student, turned his idea into a prototype using the Cyberport Creative Microfund of 100,000 Hong Kong dollar, and then joined the Cyberport Incubation Program with training, business matching, investment matching, etc., plus $500,000 Hong Kong dollar funding subsidy to transform the prototype application he developed into an education technology startup business. APRU provided an AR sandbox for schools, and the company has now evolved into a metaverse company. With so many opportunities, we need a steady stream of leaders to drive continued changes and progress. APRU Esports Fellowship Program does exactly that in nurturing young leaders to make a difference. We will continue to work with APRU this year to host programs physically in Hong Kong, enabling Pacific Rim students who are passionate in esports to participate in learning, internship, and entrepreneurial opportunities to prepare them to become future leaders. Speaking of passionate young people, some of them are also with us today. In the afternoon, we will have Pacific Rim students presenting their creative works for the digital art contest and compete in the Rampage Invitational Tournament. Don't miss out on their performances. I wish you all a fruitful and inspiring Metagame Conference, and I encourage you all to explore the Decentralized Metaverse arena in which the conference is presented, and enjoy the first ever Metaverse Conference with play to earn experience. I look forward to working with you to unleash the Metaverse powers for education, society, and together to turn a new page in innovation and technology. Thank you very much.
Mr. Yan. I now invite Professor Wang Vice President for Institutional Advancement, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, to provide the keynote address. Professor Wang has been leading HKUST's institutional advancement since 2020 and is also Chair Professor of Mathematics. During his tenure as Dean of Science and Head of Mathematics, Professor Wang founded the HKUST Big Data Institute and launched the popular Big Data Technology MSc program. Professor Wang, please.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Well, if you are in Hong Kong time, good morning. Otherwise, in the US, it would be good evening. So today, I would like to share with you the HKUST Metaverse Initiative. Okay, so originally I was thinking of talking about a bit more than just the Metaverse Initiative. As an active member of APRU, HKUST is very devoted to education, to educational innovation. And the latest one we're actually developing is the Metaverse Initiative. So let me just give you a little bit more detail about it. So the idea is the following. As many of you already know, HKUST has established a campus in Guangzhou called which is of course HKUST Guangzhou, and is scheduled to open this September 1st. Okay, so we have only a few days until the opening of the campus, and the students in HKUST Guangzhou will actually share some of courses with HKUST in Hong Kong, in Clearwater Bay. And in fact, we originally, at least in the beginning, we have the same degree. Okay, so what that means is the students on both campuses can actually take courses from each other. Okay, and many courses indeed will have students on both campuses in the same classroom. Okay. Now, of course, given the COVID situation, and even without the COVID, the communication is still, the commuting is still, quite significant. So obviously, it's unrealistic to have people commuting back and forth. And with the Zoom teaching during the COVID period, this has not really been an issue at all, that is to having some kind of remote learning. However, if you look at the student learning experience during the COVID period, it's actually not that great. Okay, so the Zoom feature is adequate, but it doesn't provide the best learning experience for the students. And furthermore, with the technology development, with all the new innovations coming up, there are actually incredible potentials in the future to go beyond just the regular classroom, okay, to augment what Zoom can do. So this is sort of one of the very driving forces between, for Meta HKUST. And we give it a name called our Metaverse, our living space. Why is that? Because we believe in the future, Metaverse will be our living space, okay? Just like our physical campus, okay? And it has enormous amount of opportunities, which I'm going to talk about, okay? So in this presentation. Now, first of all, let me give you also a little bit of a background about the whole project in relation to some of the other things we do in HKUST. We actually, everybody is talking about sustainability, right? Carbon, neutrality, sustainability. So we are not satisfied by simply saying, well, let's work on sustainability. Let's write a few papers. Let's, yell a few slogans. We actually decided we are a campus, in Hong Kong, and we have been a big promoter of sustainability. Why don't we actually make our whole campus a sustainable campus? So under this idea, we have created a project called Smart and Sustainable Campus, actually called a Sustainable and Smart Campus, SSC. Okay, and the slogan we adopt is "Our campus, our living space." Okay? So the whole the project is not just a faculty doing some research or propose something. It's actually it actually involves all stakeholders of HKUST. So faculty, students, staff, alum, and even open to the society to say, well, if you have an idea that you can improve our campus to be a more sustainable campus, we will have some funding for you to actually realize your idea. Okay, so it has been going really, really well. So if you come to our campus or visit, you will see all kinds of sustainability-driven projects. Okay, so Meta HKUST will be formed under the same spirit. That is, we are going to digitally transform our campus. Okay? In other words, we are going to have a digital twin for our campus, and a lot of the teaching, learning, and also other areas can be done in our digitally transformed campus or in our metaverse. Okay, and so here we listed a few, for example, campus-wide sharing the interaction, support and capability for teaching and learning, and also several thematic areas, including environmental visualization and art exhibition, for example. Okay, and finally, to me, that's also another very, very important area to develop metaverse is to look for new ways for governance. Okay, we have been using traditional centralized governance protocols for basically in higher education and in most other organizations. Okay, but with the development of metaverse, okay, you have to explore new ways of governance, and you have new issues arising concerning ethics. Okay, so how do we translate those new ideas actually even into our physical campus? I think that's a very worthy goal to pursue as well. Okay, so for the beginner, of course, I already talked about why we are trying to develop, what's the driving force behind the Meta HKUST project, okay? Because we actually have a need. Okay? We actually have a need to enhance the learning and teaching experience, okay? So we decided to create this, physical digital twin campuses, linking the Guangzhou, HKUST Guangzhou and HKUST Hong Kong together. Okay, so we are already in the process of building two what we call Metaverse classrooms, even though it's really beginning with the physical classroom with all the AR, VR equipment and hardwares, but later on it will be much more extensive. So we are actually in the very beginning stage, but the work has already started. Okay, and you can see augmented reality will also play a very important role. Okay, and in fact, I do want to talk a little bit about the need for some of these. For example, we are short of lab spaces. Okay, teaching lab. Faculty, of course, research have their own research labs. But we also, for students, we also have those teaching labs in chemistry, in biology, in physics, okay? And a lot of engineering as well, and a lot of experiments engineering. So because we're actually short of spaces, we're actually thinking of using augmented reality, okay, to do some of these lab work. Okay, so some of the demos I have seen, not by my university, but by companies and innovators, have been quite impressive. So we are working very closely, trying to collaborate with them and to develop our own augmented reality teaching lab and courses. Okay, and the VR, of course, we all know about that. Now. So this is basically a sort of the flow chart of what we try to do. And you can see I have already touched upon quite a few things. In the center is something called a Meta HKUST Together platform. So what does that mean? Okay, it simply means anybody can be part of this and contribute to building Meta HKUST. Okay, and what we have found in the past through the Sustainable and Smart Campus project is, in fact, if we only say, Professor X, you have a team, please do this. Professor Y, you do this, or blah, 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 you do this, that's not going to work. Okay, so a lot of the very innovative projects and very vibrant environment was created by opening this whole thing up to the community, mostly students and alums. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same thing. I understand that obviously this would involve building a truly open platform. Okay, and this is what we plan to do. And here we also mentioned, for example, tokenization and NFTs. So this is also part of our digital transformation. Okay. So, for example, in the future, we're thinking perhaps all our graduation certificates can be done using NFT, for example. Okay. So, and education has meets the metaverse. So metaverse has incredible potential for education, and this is something we're trying to do. Okay. So this is going to be fairly long, of course, but we're thinking that many of the courses can be taught, okay, either as well using in metaverse or much better. Okay, for example, let me take a quick example of history. Okay, history. So we will be developing several courses using basically in the metaverse. Okay, take an example of history. Okay, so when you learn history, it might be more vivid if we can take you to the setting in the history. Okay, I'm thinking any of the event in history. For example, if you are interested in the romance of three kingdoms, which of course a famous period in Chinese history, for certain battle, maybe we can actually take you there, and you can be the commander for one of the battles. Okay, I mean these are of course down the road, but some of these possibilities are just very, very exciting. Okay. Now, for some of the immediate thing we could do is engineering. A few days ago, I was talking to a professor. He said a lot of the students in mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, if you show them a aircraft engine, okay, they don't even know which one is the front end and which one is the back end. That's actually very common because it kind of looks alike. Okay, so you also, the student don't get a chance to actually visit a factory to see the engine. So what he said is, now there are already these augmented reality type of project where you can you can put a engine right in front of you and just completely disassemble it. And this, I assume, would work for cars and even work for health. Okay, so you can build, a very realistic 3D model, for some organs, for example, or for some certain insect or whatever, and you can, really examine what's going on. You can even dissect if you want to in the virtual space. Okay, so all these are endless, but part of the endless possibility for metaverse. And of course, I already mentioned that this immersive experience for students can give you a much more impressive and much more vivid teaching experience, teaching and learning experience. Okay, as I already mentioned, visiting historical event, travel through space, and go through, inside the body, for example, okay, taking a 3D tour, which you often see in some TV shows, taking you inside the human body to see how human body works. Okay, all these are really, as I said, extraordinary opportunities we have in the future to truly innovate education. Okay, and also we of course we are not satisfied just being doing meta HKUST. Okay, so in the future we feel that for whatever we have developed, okay, so being labs, the metaverse lab and the courses, we would like to open it up to the community. Okay, and in my view, metaverse is one particular tools, in fact, a powerful tool to promote to promote equity in education. We all know what's going on, in the society now, especially in Asian society. There are a lot of pressure for students to learn, and a lot of resources being spent, beyond classrooms. Okay, and all these resources being spent, I mean, it actually puts a lot of burden on certain families, especially on the lower income families. However, through the development of metaverse education, this can be a effective equity opportunity, or a tool for equity. Okay, so that's why I think in fact, for the societal development, we have a need to develop metaverse education. And the other thing we have been talking quite a bit in our university is decentralized education. Right now, education is highly centralized. Okay, so especially in the Asian communities, for example, in Hong Kong, in China, you essentially don't have a whole lot of tracks to get into a university. You have to take in Hong Kong would be an entrance exam called the DSE, and in China, of course, it's well known that you have a tough national entrance exam. However, education should be much more diverse than that. Okay, so we believe that through the development of education in metaverse or metaverse education, we can create a much more decentralized, a much more diverse educational landscape. So finally, my time is kind of up. I like to use just a little bit of time to talk about why the advantages of doing this in Hong Kong. Okay, so first of all, I think Hong Kong is a very unique place. It's a world leader in digital realm. In fact, there was a recent ranking of digital competitiveness. Hong Kong came out #1 in Asia and second in the world. Okay, so we know we have incredibly good infrastructure in Hong Kong as far as communication and internet, and also the basics of digital infrastructure. Okay, now Hong Kong is also very international. It blends the culture, the local culture in Hong Kong, which is actually quite unique, but it also blends with the Chinese culture and the international culture. So it's a true international hub, and it's a financial center. So we have a lot of need for internationalization, and it also has a lot of resources to develop digital economy, and in which metaverse is a big part of it. Okay. Now the other thing is China has adopted a very different track. China has been very aggressively promoting metaverse and the blockchain, digital economy. However, it has taken on a path that is quite unique. It's in a way, it's more centralized, it's more alliance-based, while the rest of the world is going into a more decentralized framework. Okay, so in Hong Kong, we are the one country, two systems. Okay, so in fact, when President Xi Jinping came to Hong Kong on July 1st, he emphasized that Hong Kong has to take advantage of the one country, two system. Hong Kong should not be afraid to experiment new ideas under the one country, two system policy. Okay, so here we have a unique chance to bridge China with the rest of the world. And Hong Kong HKUST, Hong Kong UST would like to be the leader for to be part of this bridge. Okay, we want to be the leader to develop for Hong Kong, to promote Hong Kong digital economy, and we want to be the leader for the metaverse development. Okay, and especially for education in metaverse. Okay, so with all this being said, I also would like to invite you all, okay, to follow our development in metaverse and later on be part of this new exciting future. Okay, so I'm going to end my talk here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Wang, for such an amazing presentation. Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing so far? Yeah? Anyways, we'd like to introduce our first panel of the day, titled Edutainment, Education, Gamification, and the Metaverse. This session will be moderated by Miss Etta Wang. Miss Etta Wang is the Director for USC Hong Kong International Office, Strategic and Global Initiatives. In her capacity, she is responsible to work collaboratively with all USC professional schools for admissions, academic programs, and alumni and parental development. She is also the primary ambassador to develop the university's relationship with both private and public sectors in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. Joining her on stage are Professor Lik Hang Paul Lee from Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Also, Professor Carlos Astengo from Tecnológico de Monterrey. And lastly, Professor Hui Pan from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. We will have a Q&A session for this panel. Simply scan the QR code that appears on the screen and type in your questions during the discussion. Ms. Wang, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very pleased to kick off the first panel of APRU Metagame 2022 virtual conference. My name is Etta. I am the director of University of Southern California, Hong Kong International Office. 2 years ago, I also had the same honor to be the moderator of APRU Esports Conference. So I'm very happy to come back and moderate this session with 3 leading experts in the educational industry to talk about Metaverse in education. It's no doubt that the pandemic forced students across the world to enjoy new virtual forms of education without interruption, and more attention and resources have been put online, and examples like gamification, AI, machine learning, VR, AR, etc., etc. And since Facebook changed his brand name to Meta, the business sectors have been very excited in the Metaverse conversation. We now hear more about Web 3.0, Metaverse, NFT, blockchain, and different forms of virtual reality. I sometimes got confused with all these names like AR, VR, MR, XR, if you are not really in the tech industry. We see a lot of this apply in games, business, or sport. And now today we ask a question, how about Metaverse in education? And we are going to talk about it. And we really have some great speakers today who can share with us the future of all these technologies and how can Metaverse technologies apply in young teens or even higher education. How will that affect the future of our children and how the learning experiences will be transformed? What can we envision Metaverse can create a complete new horizon of learning? I'm sure it's not just a 2D, 3D, or a discussion about physical or virtual, but what else? What is going on right now? At the same time, what are the pitfalls and dangers to avoid? How about the concerns of emotional learning, identity, or privacy? Now, I would like to welcome our panelists to take the virtual stage. We have Professor Pauline from HKUST, Professor Astengo in Mexico from Technological Monterrey, and lastly, Professor Hall from HKUST. I will ask each of you to provide your initial remarks on edutainment, education, gamification, and the Metaverse. Each of you will have about 8 minutes. And after all the presentation, I will address some questions. Depending on time, we will also address some questions from the floor. So audience, please do type up your question in the Q&A box. And then I will make a closing remark for this panel. To start with, I would like to introduce Professor Pauline as the first panelist. Professor Lee is the Assistant Professor, Department of Industrial and System Engineering, Graduate School of Data Sciences at Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. He has built and designed various human-centric computing, specializing in AR and VR. He is also an entrepreneur, started his own company, specializing in young kids' education in Metaverse. So Professor Lee, may I now pass the platform to you? And you will have 8 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can hear you perfectly, Professor Lee.
Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. Today, I would like to share my journey starting from 2015, how to implement AR or MR in the education. So, so let's move on to the next slide for having an introduction. So I graduate from HKUST. Actually, I am a graduate from Professor Peng Hui Lab. Today I am more than happy to meet him again virtually on this Zoom. Yeah, so I will leave the research part to him. Today I will have a hat as an entrepreneur to explain all my journey as an AR, VR, player working in the industry. So let's move on to the next slide. We have the so here is a very brief introduction of my company. The name is Avatech Innovation Limited. We get a lot of award like Hong Kong ICT Award, like the Hong Kong Awards for Industry in 2018, and also HSBC Business Award. All these awards go to my team, and they're working on the like the AR and VR business. Okay, so next slide. So here is a brief introduction of our products. The name is ARGEO, AR Geography. Okay, so it is an interactive teaching environment that uses the AR technology to increase the student interest and the commitment to for learning through the gamification and other learning techniques. So we work with a lot of teachers from secondary school. Most of them are the senior teachers from the geography subjects. So and we also have planned to extend the learning modules from the from geography to other places. As you can see in this video, the teacher here is showing a landscape, so the student can easily modify the landscape, and then they can learn by doing. Okay, and it is worthwhile to mention that we build up. This is already the third version of our product, and the first prototype is actually supported by Cyberport. So today we are very happy to share these products again in this venue. Okay, next slide. And before we have such a AR geography product, we can only use some very rigid demonstration like this. And so we would like to do some innovation in our classroom to build up the classroom of the future. Next slide. So in the classroom setting, I suppose this should be a video, but it doesn't matter. So the teacher asked the student come out and then do some change the landscape and then do some modification on the landscape. And then next slide. But here is the thing. You can imagine we have such a machine in the physical classroom. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that we have lockdown in the region or in Hong Kong. So people or students and teachers, they need to stay at their home, and then all the things go to the online teaching and learning. So to make sure that the student and the teacher can make a sustainable way to learn with the AR or VR, we build a new version on the iPad as a virtual environment. Next slide. Because we already have a group of users, like more than 150 schools in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Macau, and also some university like University of Hong Kong and University of Macau, and some public organization like Hong Kong Science Museum as well. Next slide. So can you play the video? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So here is the function of this virtual environments. So students can modify the landscape just by tapping on the touchscreen, and also the teacher can use the measurement tools to teach the geography here, and then they can import some preset landscape. Yeah. So, and also we have the classroom account management. We know that teachers are super busy during the COVID-19 pandemic. And also we have the AR. So after we create the landscape, the AR pop-ups can become an illustrate for facilitated discussion, even they stay at their home. So we also encourage the student to make the landscape and then print it out for a revision purpose. So go to the next slide. Yeah, so we cover a lot of topics like geography. And so actually the app is already available online on the App Store and Google Play. And next slide. And we just like the keynote speaker mentioned that during the COVID-19, all students go stay at their home. And also we also have special care to some students, like the cross-border student, so they can still learn properly with our technology. Yeah, next slide. And yeah, so we also focus on a lot of teaching content building. Actually, we have a community, and also we work with the Oxford University Press. So you can see all the existing curriculum can work with our virtual environments, and they build up some case study as their group projects. Next slide. And here is some real case, like 優才書院學生, they have the AR-driven case study for the Dongping show, and also Lam Gok Chun. Okay, yeah, next slide. Yeah, so we also organize some workshop. We are afraid that the teacher or student are not very aware about products. So we do a lot of marketing campaign for this. So here is some sharing from the teacher. So with the AR geography teaching tools, their dream is to make the things that can support the teaching and learning anywhere and anytime. So yeah, so and they hope that the visualization tools in the augmented reality can improve their teaching and learning. Next slide. And we also get a lot of media coverage, for example, on the Now TV, RTHK, and TVB as well. Next slide. And also we have reported by the Yishou magazine and some others newspaper as well. Next slide. So here we come to the final slide. So the future, we can see that after the COVID-19, we treat the COVID-19 as a catalyst to moving all the physical class to a virtual physical blended one. So that's why in 2021 we developed a lot of e-learning modules in the geography. We also leverage the 3D space as a geography classroom in the virtual environments, or what we call is Metaverse nowadays. So we encourage the student to build up the landscape, and then they can do the virtual visit in such a virtual space. So we may claim that we are the first company building the Metaverse geography in Hong Kong or in the region. So next slide. I think that's all. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lee, for this exciting Metaverse geography tools in the classroom. May I now invite our second panelist. We will now bring you from Korea to Mexico right now with Professor Estengo on the stage. And Professor Estengo is the Associate Director, Science Department, School of Engineering at Tangio de Monterrey. Some of highlight of his research focus, but not limited, is artificial intelligence, gamification, pathfinding, block traffic navigation, which is a new term I just learned about, is to solve using technology to solve traffic congestion. He is also the former Educational Innovation and Research Office Director and National Director for the Faculty Development and Educational Innovation Center at the university that he is serving. So without further delay, may I ask Professor to prepare the slide and your presentation?
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. Please, the next one. I think, and the next, please. The next one. Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a gap not only in economic or social aspects. Next, please. In particular, it has meant an educational blackout. Next. 1 billion of students were forced to leave their classroom, in many cases without adequate technological and educational platforms. Next, please. UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank estimates that the current generation of students is at risk of lost in present value 17 billion of American dollars in income over their lives. This is equivalent to 14% of global GDP. This is the reality. Next. But today we can explore other realities. Next, please. And maybe if we are sufficiently smart, we can solve problems there that allow us to be better in this reality. Next. Next and next. It is not the first time that humanity faces a problem of this magnitude, but it's the first time that in the middle of struggles times, we can reimagine and reshape our reality. Since the beginning of humanity, we ask ourselves, what is reality? Do we are capable to know it? Those our senses and minds are the only way to know and model this reality? In 1974, in the Star Trek animated series, it appears a rec room, a special room capable to give the crew a sense of other realities. They can see, hear, smell, and touch virtual objects. Next, next, and next. And the dream of a non-invasive model of other reality was a big driving innovation. Next, please. And the next, and the next. See, thank you. My first virtual reality experience was in 1993 when, with a bunch of students, we built a VR system using Nintendo's glove and Sega's glasses. It was an amazing experience, not only because we can touch or move objects within the computer. It was really amazing because the sense of achievement in our students' eyes. Next, almost 30 years later, we have at Tec de Monterrey special places named VR zones for learning. For instance, medicine or computer science using these VR technologies. The next one. But let me go back in time at the beginning of the pandemic. Our students started attending virtual classes with their cameras on. The next. Few days later, I noticed some of them start to turn it off. When I asked them why, they told me that they feel like all the classmates were invading their rooms. So we start to develop different kinds of avatars for them and to ask to use different technologies so they have the opportunity to reinvent themselves. Next, please. Now we are back at university. Next, but we are still using that experience in creating their avatars. Next, please. And electronic versions of themselves. That's the avatars. Next, please. And enhanced versions of themselves. This is a video. Can we run it? With their avatars, they were ready to interact with other person. Next. This is actually the final result for her avatar. Then the Tec de Monterrey decides to create the next level, a specific virtual environment. And next, please. It's our own metaverse. We name it the virtual campus. Next, please. 15,000 students have already lived a digital experience designed for their learning. Next. My students, for instance, live a scavenger hunt. So they went to different places, including exploring the sea, in order to find clues that lead them to solve challenge, and those challenges lead them to new clues. So it was amazing. Next, please. But the idea of metaverse is not new. Well, this is where we are celebrating. The next one, please. The idea of a metaverse is not new. 20 years ago, in 2003, Leiden Lab develops a virtual world named Second Life. Next, residents of this virtual world were able to explore it and buy virtual land or build virtual homes. It is remarkable that avatars were not imposed to follow physical laws. They, for instance, had the ability to fly. Next. In the virtual world, I found a lot of schools and universities, and all of them were built in a traditional way, using the front of the class for the lectures. The most innovative, next please, were without a physical building, but still with the use of big screen for lectures. Next, please. The lesson is clear. Innovation is not only technology. It's a change of mind. It's about to be creative and being able to generate value. Next, please. Nowadays, we are trying to incorporate object manipulation, haptics, using AI cameras, next, for an immersive learning experience. And based on this active learning, faculty must change the way we used to design learning activities. Next, please. Not all is about virtual reality. We have the potential to enhance reality with information or adding objects in augmented reality. Next, please. Here we have a lot of challenge, but when we realize that learning is a sharing trip with your students, It is more easy to challenge them, to guide them, and enjoy their achievements. And next. It's a video about how we teach augmented reality. But I would like to talk a little bit about a quite new project. Please, the next. This augmented reality. Next, please. And next. And I want to talk about the Holographic Professor, our first approach of the holodeck that we were talking about. And next, please. Next. That's the holographic. It is not really an hologram, but it is a human scale projection that allows to enhance the learning experience for our students, sharing professors from all around the world. In 2014, we run a special innovation faculty program for professors, where to ask them to develop a special project, and all of them at the end have to present their findings using AR. The next, please. The next, please. Okay. So we use also drones, and I would like to talk a little bit about the last years and the pandemic. Please, the next. Yes. In the last couple of years, within the pandemic, we started a special program with our students. They were building interactive marketing products. We were working with young writers in order to develop a mini game or a graphic novel, please, the next one, in order to engage the public to read their books. The next, and the next, please. The students were asked to work in small groups, developing a studio, and to present their findings to special judges that came from the industry, in particular from the Monterrey Interactive Cluster. Next, please. And the next, and the next. In those years, we also developed VR emergency room for training experience for young medical students. Next, and next, please. This is that's during the COVID-19, we had 2 special meetings with San Jose State University in order to find collaboration projects. I had the opportunity to work with a group of students developing first, this is a gamified case for social workers. We start with a case wrote by Moctezuma Garcia, a professor from San Jose, and we transform it into a graphic novel. Next, please. And second, next, please. We work with Alan Wang, also from San Jose State University, in a special video game product in order to teach young students about cybersecurity issues. Next and next. And we're just in the final. In 2018, I had the opportunity to went a special APRU meeting in Hong Kong about how to develop esports industry and what will be the role of university in such task. Next, please. When I returned, I was thinking that maybe with 20, 25 students, we can start something and we can ask students if they can join. At the end, we have more than 100 students working with us in an innovative week, developing the esports strategies for Tec de Monterrey. Next, please. Since then, we are in the research group, and our main areas are next and next. Basically, AI, as we already mentioned, and now neuroscience. In 2010, we were shown with this report for IEEE. They show an electroencephalogram, please, the next, of students in different activities, showing that the brain waves, next, please, for attending classes or watching TV were very similar. Next, please. Our main goal now in this research group is to understand what makes people enjoy an activity, what makes things fun. If we can determine it, if we can measure with brain waves maybe we can reproduce it in the educational environment, and maybe we can design a real gamified learning activity. So what we have learned today, next please, that the students wants to learn, just challenge them, but maybe they want to learn in different way that we used to teach them. So COVID-19 show us that they can learn in different environments, in different realities. In such realities, not everything always are good. We need to do more research about, for instance, toxicity. Maybe we need new realities, more open, to include diversity. How many different realities we need to experience in order to learn to live in harmony in our reality? Learning about these new realities and how we behave on them lead us to finally learn and understand about ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Estango. Let me come back to you during the Q&A questions. I know there's much to talk about the learning while through a lot of these exciting projects. Let us come back to you when we have the Q&A time. And now, may I introduce Professor Pan Hui from HKUST. And first of all, congratulate on the Meta HKUST and also the official opening of the Guangzhou, China campus very soon. I'm very excited for that. And Professor Hui is the Chair Professor of Computational Media and Arts and the Director of the Center of Metaverse and Computational Creativity at HKUST. He is also an international fellow at the World Academy of Engineering and an ACM Distinguished Scientist. So may I now ask Professor Hui to now present your slide?
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm ready to start the slide, please. Okay, so thanks again for the invitation. So from the keynote, I know that our Vice President, Professor Wang already mentioned about the Meta HKUST project. So I'm going to just, quickly go through some of the technical detail over there. So he already gave a very nice overview. So here you can see that, this is one of the virtual scene for our Guangzhou campus, which I'm currently in Guangzhou now after the, last week, the 10 days quarantine, and the campus is very beautiful, more beautiful than this picture. Next slide. And so as from the previous two speaker, also the keynote speaker all mentioned about the pandemic, the COVID-19, which is a very, something very bad, but actually it also led us to think about the future of education, right? So we know that there's 1.5 billion of students who have education disruption, and the students complain about, learning issues, about, they haven't attended campus. So, these are things, of course, there are also opportunity, and that we can be motivated to think more about this. Okay, next slide. So what will be the future of the education, right? So, probably we from the history we have learned about experience from other educators, for example from Edgar DELF's Chong experience. So basically what he taught about is that our learning experience is like a pyramid, right? So you just read the test and listen to your professors, probably only remember 10% of the content, but you really have an experience in the environment. Actually, you can remember 90% of your experience. So then that's why we thought about bringing immersive experience to the users. To the user here means the student, so the student can actually better learn from the materials. And also there are some other things that we believe, according to also today's panel, right? There's gamifications or customization of learning contents, and increase the interaction and creativity as well. So we also the experience of the student using Zoom or other type of online teaching. There are two major issues actually with this computer mediated learning. Is that the first one is that social presence is very important for for the engagement of the student, right? So you want to be situated in a social environment. You see the teachers, you see the student around you, so you get better engagement, which can stop you from multitasking, from just turn off your camera and doing something else. And then there's also another important concept called self-disclosure, right? So you want to disclose yourself, so you also get engaged more. So basically, the turning off the camera, of course, is not very good for this purpose. But physical classroom would be good for the self-disclosure, because the other people can see what you wear, other people can see how you look like, right? But at least in the avatar case, that you also decorate your avatar, so still others can also see how your avatar look like. So based on all this motivation, and also have the motivation that we have 2 campuses, so we have this Meta-HKUST project. Okay, please, next slide. So the Meta-HKUST project is not only the digital twins, not only the virtual world, but we also want to make the campus live. We want to create something like a physical digital metaverse. So not only the virtual environment for more people to attend the lectures, but we also trying to bring the virtual contents into the real campus. So to improve the experience of the student in the campus, also make the staff interact with the student easier, with the content which are available with their devices. Okay, so there will be a 3D model, there will live camera visit anytime, can be a remote group meeting instantly in the metaverse. There can be also, some live tour to Metaverse campus. Okay, please, next slide. So probably, you already saw this picture from Professor Wang. So basically, the architecture, we have this platform, which is Meta-HKUST Together platform, and this platform is going to, probably powered by some of these things we call the augmented reality and virtual reality concept. There will be merging of 2 campus, physical campus. There will be a layer, of different kind of application can be built on top of this software platform. Can be, some campus tour, can be navigation system, and then below that we can also implement some governance functionality, which can maybe driven by blockchain or some other technology. It's not necessarily like blockchain, but it can be other technology as well. Please, next slide. And so showing about this just some typical application here, right? So you can do an art exhibition in the campus. You have these we have the computer and media and art department, so that we have a lot of artists like professors and students. So they would like to create their digital art, and then they can just use the physical campus, also the digital campus, as their exhibition hall, right? So they can just put their art, throughout, scatter around the campus, so others people can just point their phone to some special plot and they can see those art exhibition over there. It can be also used to visualize, for example, the data, the quality of, for example, the data collected by the IoT device in the campus. So it can help them to better, engage in the campus management, like, to be green. Okay, next slide, please. And one of these, really something is going on is about the Meta Classroom. So Meta Classroom, we have already built the Meta Classroom in the Guangzhou campus. So the renovation will be done. So will be a physical classroom as well besides the virtual one. So will be a motion capturing device are installed. There will be a cave in the classroom. There will be a lot of VR and AR headset. There will be 3D scanner, like robotic arm. They will be installed and will be functions in from 1st of September. So I've been here just to looking at the construction work as well. So next slide. And with all these things, we have, the Meta, we expect our Meta Classroom will be support, learning, collaboration, gamified learning experience, and and also access to some restricted environment that actually Professor Lee have demonstrated that there's some, you can bring people to very remote places. You can also bring people to nuclear reactors or, some more dangerous places that actually you cannot physically go over there. So please, next slide. And of course, not only learning and teaching, but, we hope this system. So these photos are just, we just make them. It's not the real AUST metaverse. So we like to make something more like photorealistic. But at least the student with this idea, with this platform, they can design their virtual scene for meeting. They can create their own scenes for social event. They can be a bar or pub or some other even more creative venues in the campus. And then the next slide, I will talk about the about the also virtual meeting with for example, school office staff. Not only interact with the student, but we can also help with this platform. Can also facilitate the student and staff counseling or other kind of interaction. Okay, the last slide will be the next slide, please. So so we hope that we will make HKUST campus as a physical digital metaverse. So not only the virtual thing, but improve our real life as well in the campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor He. So terribly sorry about the time limit. And may I now ask the operation to just put down the slide so that we can have the Q&A. I would like to address the question first to each of you, and then lastly, a question to all three panelists. So maybe let me start with a follow-up question to Professor Lee. Professor Lee, you are working more towards young kids or high school students, am I right? And then
Yes.
it's really amazing of the APRU sandbox.
Yeah.
And my question is, while you launched the sandbox, what are the challenges from the teacher's side? Because they are high school or young kids educators, they may not have the resources or the knowledge. What are the typical challenges that the teachers are facing, and how you partner with them to adapt new technologies in the curriculum?
You make a very good question, and the teacher actually they have very limited time, especially the resources. But I appreciate that they give a lot of very brilliant ideas. But we need, as an entrepreneur, we need to prioritize all the ideas and build the most useful and for both teacher and student. So this is one of the challenge. We build up this RGO sandbox.
And in what way that you can give more support to them?
In which way we can give more support? We need to tell them, and also build up a lot of workshop to tell them how to use the device, and such a device can be integrated in the curriculum. And also we believe that we need to do a lot of demonstration, not only to the geography teacher, also to their principals, to who have the buying power in the school. So not only the teacher, not only the student. It's more than this, right? So we need to also provide some pitch to the principal. That is how the things work in the market in Hong Kong, at least. Yeah.
And I hope that maybe in the future the government will also give you and the institution more resources to support. I think that is a very critical part as well.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Lee. My second question is to Asango. You have many projects. I have also a lot of questions in mind. Maybe a highlight in terms of one of your projects, and you mentioned one very good point. It's not just about technologies, right? It's the way how we use technologies and make it more interactive. Can you just give us some advice or your experience sharing how educators really can use or leverage new technologies for a more fruitful learning?
Okay, thank you. In Mexico, we have a special phrase that said, you need to go slow because we are in a hurry. That means you need to do your baby steps in innovation, but you have to be aware that we are moving towards. So you can spend a lot of time doing, but you have to start and do it slowly. There is a special model from Puente Dura that it's called the SARM. And this is for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And these steps, from my point of view, is a good start for adopting or developing technologies and innovation.
So when you say start slowly means that also to give time for the educator, administrators to understand the rationale and the use of technologies, is that correct?
Yes,
or beyond
indeed, yes, indeed, that's the point. You as a professor, as a person, need to experiment first. And with each step, you gain confidence. And with that confidence, you can go faster and faster, so you can move in the innovation path.
Mm-hmm. One of your sites is quite interesting, called the Second Life in the avatar, right? In the metaverse, right? When the students transform, appear in the Metaverse Classroom in the metaverse, in avatar. Can you elaborate a little bit, like the ability to fly? And of course that in the physical classroom, you are not able to fly, but you can do much more than that physically, right? In the Metaverse Classroom. How can that really can leverage that during your project?
From my point of view, using this model that I just mentioned, maybe we can think about digital twins only as a substitution. I mean, we can recreate our universities and our classroom for our students so they can be there. But maybe if we can move forward in these steps, maybe we can have the students, for instance, they want to learn about biology. So why do I have to put them in a classroom? Why don't ask them, hey, okay, kids, let's see each other within the cell. Let's see how the ADM works and be there. So, I mean, the metaverse gives you a lot of opportunities. So it's really a matter of how much you want to experiment.
There, we do have a questions to you from the floor. Maybe I immediately address that. You point out that through AR, VR, we can really show us a new way of thinking. How can technology be applied for social good, climate change, or future pandemics? I think that probably echo a little bit of my previous questions in terms of the new way of metaverse technologies in education. Can you hear that, Carlos?
You said about diversity, sorry?
Well, the question is how AR, VR can be applied for social good, climate change, or future pandemics.
Okay, for instance, again, we can ask as students to develop special models to simulate, but instead of using just a computer and just to see the graphs, maybe they can see how, for instance, the global climate problems start with special initial conditions. So at the end, if we don't do something, the world will end in, I don't know, this shape or with these problems. So the metaverse gives, again, the opportunity not only to think about it, but to live in it.
And I think echo what you just shared, we have to start slowly as well. Maybe some small actions of adopting the new technologies on the teaching of climate change, because this is such a big topic.
Yes, it is a complex topic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Samuel. And I come back to you later. Last questions to Ben. Follow-up questions to your presentation. I think you have highlighted much more on the Meta HKUST, which is a metaverse campus. My question is, what brings the university come up with this idea? And what are the learnings, the key learnings during the makeup of the Meta HKUST that you can share with our audience?
Okay, thanks, Etta. Yeah, so this is actually, a kind of initiative that we want to build for this, right? So there's actually three main reasons. The first reason is because of, as we just, all the speakers like Carlos and Paul, and even previously the Professor Wang have mentioned about the pandemic, right? So the pandemic might have actually disrupted the education of, more than 1 billion students, right? So this actually, of course, it's a disaster, but also make us think about the future of education, right? It's just, they're always, we see the light. And then the second reason is, of course, we have these two campuses, one in Hong Kong, Clearwater Bay, and one in Guangzhou now. They're not too far from each other, but, because of the pandemic, they're also getting far. It's not easy to commute, right? And then, how to actually let the teaching and learning of the student and professor for two campuses can be, better integrate, right? This is very important because we don't want two campuses just, to be, totally doing their own thing, right? So this is actually a nice concept to bring them together. And the third thing is actually, again, all the speakers have, talked about that is that, the technology is now there, right? So we have all the, moving from, the history of, computation, right? So, technology get ready, 2011, there's, probably the blockchain technology that enable you to do ownership. And then we also have, 2015, the AR device, get a lot. And then 2016, the VR device, today, all of these devices get also cheaper. And then AI technology, edge computing technology. So, I think we are ready. So then, all kind of ready. So then it's a right timing to putting this initiative together. And as you mentioned about this, what will be benefit from this, of course, the teaching and learning will be the first thing, right? That, the student in Guangzhou can take courses in Hong Kong campus. So, in a better, not only Zoom way, right? They can like in the virtual space or mixed reality space. And also for the student in Guangzhou, in Hong Kong to take the courses in Guangzhou as well, right? So this actually would enrich the experience. And then we also want another emphasis is about the entrepreneurship, environment, like the student, they will be grouped to a couple of ones in a group to look at each of these important research topic, and probably we hope there will also be by addressing the real meta campus problem, and they're going to come up with some idea for business as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all. We do have a lot of questions from the Q&A box, but I don't think that we are able to address all. Let me maybe consolidate one main theme. I think many are concerned about the application. That is how we, as an educator, really can apply the new technologies like AR, VR, or etc. into a traditional learning environment. I know we have covered a little bit on that, but if I can ask each speaker, each panelist to give one recommendation in terms of the how application questions that you can share with the audience. Maybe 1 minute step or one key learning, one recommendation that you would recommend educators or schools that they can start learning how to apply the new technologies in one of their curriculum. So if I may ask, any of you would like to start first?
Perhaps I can start first.
Thank you.
I think in this panel, we already discussed a lot of technology aspect, and we also see that the hardware become more mature. And I predict that maybe in 2025, we will see a majority of students and teachers will use the virtual environments in the traditional classroom. But one very important thing is how the teacher become accredited to deal with the new challenge in the ethics, or how to manage the student in the classroom will be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Professor Estengo, can you also give us your recommendation on how?
Yes, my recommendation is just ask your students that you want to experiment that technology. Allow them to work together, to share the experience. And at the end, as I mentioned, the learning process is a sharing trip between the professor and the students.
Thank you. So sharing, okay. So use the brains from the students as well. So Professor Hkusd?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I think everybody we have mentioned about the advantage of all this metaverse learning and teaching. So I just want to just little bit put in some water here. This about that's the challenge as well in this system, right? That there will be some issues, for example, cyber sickness, right? That the user have to understand, the teacher have to know that there's potential cyber sickness, that some people can get sick in the virtual environment, right? So then actually it's kind of, you need a kind of gradually adapting. You cannot just suddenly jump in and ask the student to wear the headset for 1 hour and not taking off, right? They may have some problem, right? So I think this process would be, take it like, also, like I say, maybe a little bit slow adapting this technology, and then get over there, and then yeah, then it will be better, right? So you understand the potential issue of this technology as well.
Okay, Professor Hkusd. Well, I think that we really are running out of time. The one very final question to all of you, also as a closing of this panel, is as a very big picture, how do you see Metaverse or all these new technologies will transform the education, say in very short time, in the next 1 or 2 years of time? What are some of the changes that you will see in the very near future?
I see that the virtual environments become a very good canvas for the student to propose some project-based learnings. As you can see in the geography teaching, my case, they build up a lot of projects. So we make sure the student gain better learning experience.
Thank you. Estango, Professor Estango?
Yes, the metaverse is already here. And what we need to understand is that there is not the only, the virtual reality is not the only reality that we can share with our students. So in order to develop their skills for students, let us to experiment and to develop learning activities in each reality so they can really learn to live in our own reality.
Thank you. Very good remark. Thank you. And Professor Hkusd?
Yeah, so I will see that in the next maybe short term 2 or 3 years, there will be more and more teaching moving. So I can see that they were moving from like Zoom to more like virtual environments, and the of course the student will also become more and more familiar with this virtual environment, or may be able to make their own platforms or scene, create their thing, right? So there will be more master of the technique for some of these VR environment creations. So there will be the digital native soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, because of the time, I may need to make a closing. And thank you so much for all the questions from the audience. And we hope to address your questions maybe through email after the panel. And I think that we have a fantastic discussions. And thank you all the 3 subject experts, Professor Lee, thank you, and Professor Estango, thank you, and Professor Hkusd. Thank you so much for all your precious experience. And indeed, the Metaverse has been in the conversation for a long, long time. And I do see a lot of progress in the business, in the sports, and right now, also as a maturing stage in education. It's definitely not just 2D virtual argument, it's really the use of new technologies as a new way of learning. How students, teachers, parents, or even educators, government can work together to make the learning more live, more fruitful. And then our future children can be more creative, can be more interactive, and more embrace of the new way of technologies. I hope that all of you enjoy today's sessions, and I know that there will be more exciting programs in the afternoon. If you are in Hong Kong, please do visit the Cyberport. They have a lot of roadshows and also demonstrations of VR, AR, and all these technologies. At the end, I want to say that we are still learning on the use of technologies. And thank you all, our educators, our researchers have been putting so much efforts and your time in making our education in a new era. I hope that you enjoy the panel, and thank you again for the time. And next time, I hope that I will be maybe putting on a new, creative, interesting avatar to meet you in the Metaverse Classroom, and also a time that we can also say hello to each other physically in our world as well. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wang, for the insightful discussion on edutainment, education, and the metaverse. We now invite panel 2 titled Elite Collegiate Esports. This session is moderated by Dr. Nao Sky Calvelua. Sky Calvelua is head of the UH Esports Academic Task Force, University of Hawaii, Manoa, and received a PhD degree from the Communication and Information Sciences program. Broadly, his research interests are at the intersection of technology, society, and gaming. His dissertation work is an ethnographic study of the still emerging scene of college esports in the United States, which included his doing fieldwork at the University of California, Irvine. Joining him on stage are Ms. Yeonjin Shin, Overwatch, Professor Jim Huntley, University of Southern California, and Ms. Kathy Cheng, Voice for the Intercollegiate Esports. We will have a Q&A session for this panel. You may simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during the discussion. Dr. Calvelua, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. I am Sky Calvelua. I am very, very excited to welcome our second panel for our discussion today. I want to thank the Metagames Conference and the APRU for inviting this illustrious panel to discuss a topic that is very important within the domain of esports, and that is the topic of college esports. And so with that, I would like to first provide some context of this hour's discussion. And this hour's discussion will revolve around a number of themes, and those themes are very important within the topic of collegiate esports. And that's really number one, discussing what are the relationships between the industry itself, the larger video game industry, and what is happening with the development of college esports. Number two, what are sort of some of the strategies that universities are doing or creating or implementing in supporting esports on college campuses? Number three, what are some of the challenges as well? This is something that is very new in North America still. And so what are some of the challenges and how are the universities trying to combat that? And then finally, what ways are universities, schools, and colleges cultivating this sort of culture of community, student development, and student life when it comes to college esports on university campuses? And so with that, once again, I am Nao Sky Calvelua. I am the director of the University of Hawaii's esports program. I'm also the lead of the task force at the University of Hawaii when it considers discussing looking at or cultivating, again, these type of cultures on campuses when it comes to campus esports. So number one, the agenda today is really to do an introduction of our guests. I'm delighted to have three very important speakers today for this hour. Number one, we'll be hearing from Yeonjin Shin. She is from the Overwatch League, and she is somebody that is related to or deals with player support operations and coordination for the Overwatch League. Number two, we're going to have Professor Jim Huntley, and he is somebody that is dealing with the larger games industry in California, especially at USC. He's faculty advisor for the USC Trojan Esports program, and we're very happy and delighted to have him as well. And then finally, we have Kathy Cheng. She is the board member and vice president of Voice, which is a nonprofit. Voice essentially stands for the Voice of Intercollegiate Esports, and it is something that is it's a nonprofit that is growing in reach and also influence when it comes to looking at collegiate esports from the grassroots area, but also from getting presidents involved as well. So we're very happy to have all three. So today's agenda is we're going to have each of the speakers provide a 5 to 10 minute background and introduction to their own history with games and esports and what they're doing now. After that, I will follow up with questions to elaborate on the discussion of the themes that we covered or that I outlined today. And so with that, I'd like to actually start with Yunjin Shin and have her explain what she does and also her views on sort of collegiate esports as we move into this discussion. So Yunjin Shin, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Yunjin Shin. I also go by YJ. I am currently a player relations coordinator for the Overwatch League at Blizzard, and I've been here since April of 2022. I was also a director of HR at Rutgers Esports, a collegiate student-led org at my university, where I've also gained experience with competitive operations and graphic design. I'm very excited to share my insight and perspective with all of you as someone who has been around in the esports industry, specifically collegiate, for about 6 years now.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Next, we have Professor Jim Huntley.
Hi, my name's Jim Huntley. I am a professor at the University of Southern California. I've been doing marketing for a little over 25 years in various verticals, from food at General Mills to toys at Mattel to my time with video games at THQ. I've been teaching at the University of Southern California for the last 5 going on 6 years. And around 4 years ago, we had a student that came up to me because I just recently started as a new adjunct, and he knew that I was very business oriented, marketing oriented. And he said, well, if you're a marketing person and we're the #1 ranked games program from an academic perspective, how do we not have an esports program? And I was like, that is a very good point. And so that's what got me to embark, down the rabbit hole of starting up this organization on the campus, getting official recognition from the school, so that they, from a university perspective, because not only are we just an esports organization for our school or our program, we're the esports organization officially recognized by the university. So any sort of collegiate varsity competition or even club activities around specific games, that falls into the Trojan Esports umbrella. So we've been doing this for around 4 years now. It's very much been a labor of frustration and love. I've enjoyed my time with the students and building up the academic scaffolding around the kind of competitive nature of esports that we have going on between universities. But there's also just a lot of opportunity that at least I've tried to bootstrap as much as I can to fill in the gaps in terms of having some formalized structure where we could have some more, I'd say, more formalized structure between schools that are rivals, that are large schools with passionate alumni fan bases in traditional sports, activating those fan bases and shifting them to esports and getting them as excited about digital athletes as much as analog athletes. So really, I'd say the most recent thing that we've done is started an organization along with the other members of the traditional Pac-12 conference called the PAC-U. We started that in 2020 when COVID first kicked off, because we saw that traditional sports like football and basketball, which is a lion's share of what our fans and alumni tend to watch, were going to be suspended or truncated because of the pandemic. And so we said we have to step up and do what we can to fill in that gap and build some school camaraderie and enthusiasm in the absence of those traditional sports. So reached out and worked in tandem with the other 11 people that do my job in the Pac-12 and bootstrapped a 6-week session of just back-to-back games featuring Overwatch, Rocket League, and Overwatch, Rocket League, and League of Legends. So we're still pushing that along, and we're continuing to work to grow and evolve esports among the college community at large.
Okay, fantastic, Jim. And also Kathy.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Kathy Chong, and my collegiate esports journey started at UCI. I was at the University of California, Irvine as an undergraduate student and just met a bunch of gamers on campus. And it was just a hobby initially. We started a club in 2012, and quickly we realized that this was going to be something bigger than just a bunch of friends getting together and playing games. We started running events, doing tournaments. Thankfully, our location was very fortuitous. We were able to work with some AAA game companies nearby us, Blizzard and Riot Games, that were actually investing into collegiate esports. So as a student, I was able to start seeing what it might be like to work in the industry one day. And so as a leader within that collegiate space, doing a lot of the grassroots events and just kind of building up the community that way, it was a constant fight at this time around 2012, 2013 to really prove that collegiate esports could be something that was sustainable and viable for a school to pursue. So thankfully, I was lucky enough that after graduating, I was approached with this idea by an administrator named Mark Deppy, who is currently our director of the UCI esports program, who had heard about my successes as a student and decided that, we want to see what it might look like to create a full-fledged scholarship, official varsity gaming program on our campus. So right after graduating, hopped immediately into the administrator side of things and started building up one of the first programs, first public program to have an esports program in America. And so I stayed there for about 5 years, just kind of developing things as their assistant director, working on a facility, offering scholarships, looking at how we can apply all these different skills to our students and help them succeed, whether they wanted to stay in esports or not. And once I was kind of familiar with the collegiate ecosystem, we really expanded to helping other schools get into the space. And that kind of leads me to where I am now with Voice. Sky brought this up earlier, but a great quick intro from him about how we are trying to support not just the students at the ground level, but also try to involve people at all different levels of university. And so now it's really a great chance for me to be able to tap into all of the networks that we've been building as student leaders and as administrators, as educational professionals, to kind of just bring people together so we're not constantly reinventing the same things and seeing what we can learn from each other from different schools all over the United States and also internationally. We're really excited to learn about all of that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kathy. Jim, I think you wanted to add on something as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say huge congrats to Kathy and Mark Deppy at SCI, because I will say when we started up our organization at Trojan Esports and we reached out to UCI, they were extremely helpful with giving us their foundational documents, how they operated from an organizational perspective. And it really, I'd say, saved us a solid year of pain in terms of how do we structure what we're doing on campus. So they are definitely the thought leaders when it comes to esports from a collegiate space in the US. And I think myself, not only just myself, but I'm sure a bunch of other schools had the same experience from them. So
great. Yeah, absolutely. So, the APRU is a coalition of both North American universities, but also universities in Latin America and in Asia. And so this topic of college esports is something that's very new, or could be very new to the audience itself. And so one thing that is really quite important is sort of getting that understanding of where we're coming from, what this has meant. I think a lot of the references we may be discussing or tossing out there will be completely new to some folks in the Zoom session. But one thing that I think is really important is to, again, tie back to sort of the grassroots discussions about where this has started in some sense. And I know for YJ, so YJ from the Overwatch League, she mentioned, Rutgers and her background with collegiate and Rutgers and how that became a starting point, a platform for her to kind of launch off in. And so I'd be very curious, YJ, could you touch upon that collegiate aspect? Because what we see with YJ is that, she's moved into industry in a big way. She's working for the Overwatch League. And so for many students in collegiate esports, YJ is kind of the dream example, right? You go from collegiate right into, a major global operator of esports. And so, YJ, could you touch upon perhaps, what you did in Rutgers, and, in what way did that help you get into industry, or was it something that, wasn't connected to what you're doing collegiate? We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, of course. In my time at Rutgers Esports, what we primarily prioritized was hosting tournaments as well as events, specifically around colleges and other universities. So we're very regional in terms of getting support from a bunch of different gaming adjacent companies to help sponsor us to be able to have the funding and merchandise and providing support in other ways such as marketing to really help give us more opportunities to host larger events and tournaments. Give me just a moment. Sorry about that. Lost my train of thought. I mostly dealt with HR, where I was primarily organizing a lot of the schedules and working alongside directly with many other students in creating a lot of the programs and planning behind running these events. And eventually we were able to scale to hosting events such as NYXL Spring Rally in 2019 that had over 40 universities participating, along specifically in the East Coast, since we felt like we weren't given a lot of love compared to like the West Coast respectively. And then for the larger scale of esports events, I think that the Collegiate Overwatch Championships hosted by TESPA in the years from 2016 until 2021, specifically for Overwatch, were really amazing to participate in. These tournaments don't just have to be about competitive play per se. You can make an entire event out of these events that you wish to host, such as by having activations like educational panels and inviting, amazing people such as Kathy, Jim, and Sky to come speak out at them. Or you can have other things such as casual playstations and other things to make these events really memorable for students that want to come back year after year. But yeah, I feel as though there's a lot of things within specifically collegiate that don't limit you just because, you're student-led or you feel like, there isn't a lot of reach that you could do. Start out with reaching out early, get information, get involved in some way. If you're passionate about it, I'm sure you can make it work.
Okay, great. Thank you, YJ. And can you guys hear me? I just wanted to make sure. Okay, good. My audio is interesting. Okay, thank you so much, YJ. So going to Jim, USC is a school that carries a heavy brand name, right? This is a school that everybody knows, especially on the West Coast. And so I'm very curious to understand, when you are leading the programs or when you're leading the esports program itself, what type of goals, what type of missions, what type of outcomes are you looking for when it comes to being a faculty advisor of a collegiate program? Like I said, that USC is a school definitely well known for its film and well known for its media and creative arts programs. In what way are you either trying to get students into the industry, or are you looking to cultivate and craft skills that really are broader than that and that are really trying to tap into something that is more applicable to really the larger tech industry? I'd be very curious to understand that, Jim.
It's a good question. From my perspective, it's definitely more of the second option, which is really building in infrastructure to provide students with skills that they can use in whatever career path that they take. Because keep in mind, I'd say even to a greater extent for digital competition, I don't know what the percentage is, but not every collegiate football player goes on to play for the NFL. Not every collegiate basketball player goes on to play for the NBA. I'm guessing that ratio is a fraction of that for collegiate esports players to pro esports players. So we really are focused on the other aspects of what analog sports also focus on, which is how to build teamwork, how to help our players with communication, interpersonal skills, how to help them with how do we collaborate together in a positive way? How do we deal with conflict resolution, even when the pressure is on and it's on the fly and someone makes a mistake? How do you deal with that or recover from that, and then work to be successful in the future? So it's been very much more about really focusing on the holistic skills and the soft skills that athletes, whether they're digital or analog, would need to master, or at least flex their muscles in, so that they can then take those skills into the workplace, whether it's tech or biotech or aeronautics or whatever it ends up being. So our students, I can say, even though I'm a professor in the USC Games program, even though we're like #1 ranked, I would say only a minority of the students that play esports are actually in my program. The students come from literally every single school across the campus. So they're all there to play. They played that particular game for the bulk of their childhood, junior high school years. And so they are, they've heightened their skills to the point where they're the best of the best in their age group. And they also want to get a degree and go to a top school and then get a job afterwards. So we look at this as a way station where we can train them on the skills that they would need to take with them into the future and into adulthood, and less so about, okay, well, how do we learn how to get you ready to work at Riot or Blizzard or fill in the blank.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Jim.
Of course.
And so, for Kathy, one thing that I think is quite apparent when looking at the growing industry or the growing programmatic development of collegiate esports across North America is really tapping into creating networks among the colleges themselves. And so one thing I would be very curious to sort of understand is, number one, in what way is voice trying to create those networks? In what way is voice trying to create a nonprofit or an entity in which they're trying to get an understanding of what is happening around collegiate esports nationally? Because what we see in collegiate esports, again, I'm going back to kind of updating the audience, is that, collegiate esports is something that's relatively fairly new when it's in the programmatic development. We're looking at roughly around 2014 when we saw the first program come up at RMU in Chicago. And so this is not something that we would say has a long history, even though gaming on college campuses has been forever, right? I grew up gaming on a college campus. I have friends who did that. All of us did that, but we didn't necessarily call it college esports. And it was quite fragmented, right? Back when I did it, we would have to connect with colleges across the state or a neighboring state, but we'd have to do it very informally, get to know a friend who had a friend who had a friend, that we'd set up a competition together. Now there is a push to actually get a more standardized version or standardized set of protocols and communication networks among different colleges. And so I'm very curious to understand, number one, going back to discussing voice, in what way is voice trying to create that standardization and communication among different colleges? Because that is something that's very important as I see the development of college esports happening in North America.
Right, Sky, you actually bring up a great point as part of that question, which is like everything historically has been very fragmented, right? So I think when we were thinking about, so first of all, voice is comprised currently of a board of directors, and everyone on that board of directors, I think other than me and a couple other officers, are current directors at schools. So these are people that are from all over the states. They're from all different types of schools, different sizes, et cetera. And so when we brought all these people together to one table to figure out what can we do to bolster up collegiate esports across all of our schools, across all of the communities that aren't even represented in this room, I think that was when we realized that fragmentation was very much an issue. It was something that, everyone kind of has their own maybe local bubbles, as you mentioned, like maybe the schools in the same state would sometimes do some intercollegiate activities. There were intramural activities that would happen. I know for the University of California system, we've been every year for a couple years now, we've been trying to do multiple kind of invitationals just to kind of get the rivalries and the storylines going. And so that's been very successful. And I think what Voice is trying to emulate is that level of camaraderie, but also resource sharing that previously has been done in like small bubbles and not necessarily on a national scale. So what we can see is now we can bring in experts where maybe your school doesn't have a huge research focus, but this school has a ton of game studies researchers. So how can we leverage that network, leverage that relationship to share that data among all the schools that might not be able to do that work themselves? And one school might be very competitively successful. Another school might focus more on like film and media. And, there's just so many different elements of esports program that doing it by yourself at your own institution, using what limited resources you might have. Because as you say, it's so new. There are so many schools that have different levels of support from their own universities, different levels of support from even just thinking about like state government, for example, that we can kind of use all these different models to help each other out. And, Jim, I really appreciate the shout out you did earlier, because that was a great example of why these networks are so important, because we can share resources, we can share success stories with each other. And I've heard so many case studies of people that have used UCI's data that we put out there. Like, this is our business plan from year one. This is what we've done. These are the stakeholders on our campus. It's just kind of helped them skip a couple months of work, but also think about like, here's a case study I can bring to my president, to my chancellor. And so we're seeing a lot of cases of we're just trying to help people along and try to reduce the friction currently that goes into starting a new program or even just leveling up your existing program. And that's why I think networks are so important.
That's a great point. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, for those in the audience, the development of college esports, as I talked about before, we're looking at around 2014 as really sort of the launch off points of an official program. But in 2016, with UCI coming onto the scene, there was a significant shift in how college esports was being institutionalized within the higher educational scene. And that was this idea of looking at student development as a core feature, right? And having actual pillars as part of the program itself. And so for a lot of North American colleges, UCI was the gold standard in 2016 and 17 and 18, in which a lot of universities, Hawaii included, really looked to emulate, because there was understanding that this was, these programs were more than competition. Even though competition was clearly still an important part of it, there was a strong nod that there needed to be more discussion around programmatic development that included diversity, inclusion, student development, careers, networking. And so, yeah, that's a great point. I think both of you, Jim and Kathy, really, bounced that off. We definitely had that business plan as well. I remember those days. So absolutely, it's a great point. And so I'd actually like to take a question. There's two questions that were posed, and it's a question that we could actually address now, because it's a theme that we could go over and over again. And that first question that I'd like to tap into, and it's one that's, I think, going to be very relevant in this discussion, is, again, what are some of the challenges in connecting students, academics, and the gaming industries, right? And I did mention this before, that, there are definitely challenges and obstacles in creating these programs and creating the academic needs that students need in this. And also, what are some ways to overcome these challenges? Okay, and I'll open this up, for those of you that on the panel, if you have an example. But I think that's very important to really, because I think a lot of times we leave that question to the very end. We may not get time to cover those. But yes, let's go ahead and address that. What are the challenges in connecting students, academics, and the gaming industry together in this discussion?
Not to put you on the spot, but Sky and YJ, I think the Overwatch League and University of Hawaii project kind of really speaks to a lot of those intersections. So I'm curious. I would love to hear how you two would answer that.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, then sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot, YJ.
No worries at all.
Absolutely.
Some of the ways that I felt as though my university specifically struggled with was that Rutgers historically has always been very solid in terms of sports, very traditional, like providing support that way. But when it came to esports, they didn't see a lot of value in our program as overall, and just providing any sort of funding or providing other ways of providing support, such as we've been fighting for a land center for years, but we finally got it, and there's so much support around it from academics that we're just so happy to have the ball rolling with that. But just getting there, I think one of the things that helped so much was looking at what other universities have created in terms of success stories and driving their own narratives, providing hard analytics for what has worked for them in terms of how many applicants they've been receiving from their esports teams, being really exciting and being a future that students want to invest in and get involved with, and other things like that. I think it's honestly just bouncing a lot off of what other unis are doing and how they're paving the way for other programs to be able to do the same. I don't know about how you feel about it, Sky, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think I could speak to the ways in which some of these things could be overcome. And I think it goes to Kathy's point, that the Overwatch League and the University of Hawaii created a very powerful partnership starting in 2001, in which the Overwatch League came to the University of Hawaii campus to hold 5 tournaments. And in some sense, it was unprecedented to really have that for us. Or for many universities, because it's very hard to really imagine any publisher going to one spot 5 times in 1 year. Usually they go to all different locations, but for them to come to one small campus, in Hawaii was very special. And so, for us, we were able to turn that relationship more than just a facilities relationship, more than just a rental relationship. And we were able to create an internship out of it and to get students involved. We had over 20 students last year come in, shadow the Overwatch team crew look at, for example, like what YJ was doing, kind of shadow what she was doing, have her come and speak. And it presented our students really with an unprecedented peak, really more than a peak, but really a peak into an industry that is really very black box still, right? It's still quite a mystery. And our students deeply appreciated it so much. I mean, we created personal relationships between our students and the actual Overwatch League crew. And that was quite special. And so I think, having these kind of relationships between the industry and the universities themselves is one way to really speak to the power of what can happen. Of course, not everybody can do it, but for us at University of Hawaii, we have deep appreciation to the Overwatch League for choosing us to do these type of things with them. So absolutely. Okay, so I have a question here that I think is also something that I would like to learn more about with what you're doing, each of the panelists here, and that's sort of this idea of going back to the challenges, right? These challenges that we have with students in terms of supporting what they're doing, supporting the skill sets that they're doing. And Jim, I really want to go back to this discussion of cultivating soft skills. Because when I talk to faculty, when I talk to teachers, when I talk to administrators, one thing that really sparks interest, visibility, and attraction to what we're doing in collegiate esports is that we're creating what is basically called soft skills. And so in what way do you see soft skill development in games and esports as being relevant to the larger industry, right? Because again, when folks come into collegiate esports, they're often, shown kids in front of a computer playing on a team with a game that may not be comprehensible or maybe a little bit confusing. And they're trying to ask themselves,
what? How dare you,
What are they
sir?
getting out of it? What are they getting out of it?
That
What can
never
we say to them,
happens,
Jim?
Guy. That
Right.
never happens. It's always completely understandable from the first viewing. All these, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think the challenges are it's kind of in really three buckets, and it might have been even tied back to the previous note, and it also ties to the soft skills thing. The short, brutal answer to your question is I'm not sure if the industry has a direct metric or necessarily a financial interest to really worry about investing in college students learning soft skills. It's a nice to have, and they certainly enjoy the PR and social media and kind of the engagement between their publishing teams that focus on collegiate esports and the collegiate esports players. But it's very much and I think collegiate esports infrastructures within a lot of publishers, it's kind of a sidecar, if you will, to the pro esports organization that they've got, whether it's like tucked into that pro organization or separated from. It is something that, the ROI, aside from just general brand building, and, this is a really important demographic for most gaming companies, making sure that they they're welcoming and supportive of players that want to, compete professionally on college campuses. That's the thing that I think happened with most publishers. It's one of those things where the evolution of collegiate esports was, hey, I love playing League of Legends or Overwatch or Rocket League, and I'm going to get a bunch of friends on the campus that play this game, and maybe I'll reach out to Riot, or maybe I'll reach out to Blizzard and see if they've got some swag they can send me for this thing that we want to do with the school down the street or school, on the other side of the city. And then they send swag or send some support or send some graphics packages. And that evolves into, well, it isn't a tremendous amount of investment to just keep that flywheel of engagement and enthusiasm going on college campuses with, I would say, comparatively minimal effort, because the heavy lifting on the organization and the student engagement and the management and the tryouts of the teams kind of falls onto the administration or the staff or the students themselves. If the administration and staff aren't engaged in esports directly, like USC and UCI and some other schools are. So I think that's the soft skills are something that's important to us as college professors and academics, and student, student influencers. But I'd say it's definitely much more important on the brand building front for most publishers and making sure they've got, a positive vibe and a lot of engagement in their game on college campuses as a whole.
Right. And I think, Jim, I'd love to know, is that brand building effort something that is easier for a school like USC to accomplish versus a school that is a bit smaller? In what ways have you seen? So, for example, we see a lot of discussion around NIL, which is again a very North American collegiate sport topic. But what we're seeing in North America or in the United States is that athletes are being able to bank off and make money on their own image. And so do you see that as something that will transfer into the larger domain of what we see in esports? Because esports itself has always been comfortable with having their players make money off their brand without being confined by amateurism rules. So is that brand element something that you see really at the forefront of these programs and these initiatives as we move forward?
I think the brand element is definitely more of the focus. I do think if college esports athletes were able to monetize their image and their likeness in some other formats or in licensing deals, I don't think, at least initially, the publishers would have an issue with that. I think the challenge is, and it's been a chronic challenge for, I'd say, pro esports as well as collegiate esports, is that critical mass, the momentum. Because I remember when pro esports came on the scene and people were spending 6-7 figures for licensing fees for pro franchises on fill in the blank game, it was like, wow, that is going to take a really long time to get your ROI back. And I think 7, 8 years later, wow, that's going to take a really long time to get your ROI back. And I think it's been a case of, I think when the hype first kicked off, it was, we're going to overtake football. And I think most people who kind of knew the business and metrics of football in America were like, yeah, I'll see you when that happens. I think if the collegiate and the pro scenes expanded enough where there were more passive viewers in the streams and engagement in the competitions, I think there would be more opportunity for those players and the schools themselves to license more. But I think until we get critical mass, and it's a snake eating its tail to a certain extent. You need financial funding to put on a professional looking stream to promote your team playing other teams and advertise and promote how good or bad, but not bad, but how good they're doing competitively, to then get sponsors to pay for more cool and slick promotion and production to stream more and promote more and advertise more. And we're still kind of at that nascent stage of like, we launch in the fall, we kick things off, we play some matches, we stream them, a few hundred people sometimes simultaneously view up, but they're not numbers at the point where a McDonald's region or a Toyota region would actually sign up. Now, there are examples of that happening where a bunch of SoCal schools have banded together. But I'm going to guess, let's put it this way. The people that sign up for projects like that, it hasn't exploded. We haven't had like it be so successful that large companies are beating down our door to sponsor teams left and right. So there's a long way to go. There needs to be some startup. There needs to be some startup capital to just get that momentum going. And I think it's a struggle to get, to the earlier question, it's a struggle to get schools to invest in something like that. It's a struggle to get the publishers to invest in something like that. And the students, of course, just want to play. So
yes,
we're trying to find that starting point.
Those are great points. Now, I want to actually go to one of the questions I was asked. And Kathy, I'd like to actually have you maybe take a stab at it. I think it's a really interesting question. It's the last question that was asked here, and I'll read it here. It says that U.S. collegiate space appears to be well connected with more formalized forms of communicating and collabs. And the Asia scene is still very grassroots. How can we take lessons from US and Europe and then become more mature, I guess, within the collegiate scene in these locations? So again, considering the audience here in the APRU as being sort of pack rim, right? And when they look at North America, they're seeing really a collegiate scene that is perhaps quite distant into the future. And so, Kathy, I really want to go back to you and your work with the club scene in UCI and the grassroots scene that you were involved with in 2012. And is there anything that, any lessons, any advice that you can give to up and coming universities in Asia that may not have the resources, knowledge, and know-how as to what things can you expect, or in what ways can you offer advice here?
Right. I think it's easy to look at kind of what's going on in North America today and see that it's come so far from kind of when we first started things out, when, we're really building momentum, I would say, in like the 2010s, and really kind of growing that into something structurally supported. But it definitely wasn't always that way. And I think a lot of what I've seen, especially for me, I mostly have seen what some European clubs have done, for example. And I think the person that asked this question said that Europe is also a bit further along. And I think that's true with, you seeing more nonprofits pop up, you see more schools that are investing into programs. But I know just a couple years ago, like European schools were coming to North American schools as well, saying, how do we convince our administration to kind of get involved? So I think we're kind of seeing like this kind of, not really a catch-up effect, but every region is going through the same timeline. It's just we're at different points of that timeline. And so I think it's really useful to look into the past years in Europe, the past decade in the North America, and see like what were the milestones that really got us to where we are today. And I think there's kind of 3 different ways that we can push. My background obviously would be from the student side. It was most things were student organized. Most of the momentum came from student passion and free labor, to be quite honest. And I think the quicker that we can make that sustainable and not so detrimental to students, like also wanting to have a good, academic career, is like the sooner you will get that energy pointed in a positive direction. So say there's like a faculty member at a school in Asia that wants to support all the things that students might already be doing, but doesn't have, say, the money or the resources to create an official program or the support from the university, that one teacher can still maybe find resources that the students aren't aware of, help promote things, help speak on their behalf. I know for UCI, for example, if no member of faculty or administration ever like bolstered our activities and said, look at what the student club is doing, look at these amazing events that are performing better than almost any other club on our campus, brought it to the right people on campus to show them that data, we would have never gotten to where we are today. We needed someone from the inside to be like, I'm going to go out on a limb and just like support the students and believe in what they're doing. So that's the second kind of prong, is like, we need someone like a champion at the school to kind of push things forward before there's any official structure behind it. And the third is on industry. I would say that in the really early days of grassroots esports, we were still seeing a lot of support from publishers that saw the value in the events that we were doing. So we were doing viewing parties, just using Riot Games as an example, that is also a global game company, right? They were intent on giving out, swag packs or like skin codes, or like, what can we do to help you out? Maybe try to give you a schedule a little bit in advance so you know how to plan out your events. I think that motivation, highlighting us on their website, we got some news articles out there about our events. I think all of that has been so important. And I know every region, like regional teams of all these different game companies, do act differently and have different priorities. But if there's a way to find a champion within a game company as well, maybe figure out what they're looking for. Like, are they looking for more stream viewers? Maybe you have a really talented content creator on your campus that can restream things and partner up with the publisher directly on big tournaments. And all of a sudden they're seeing, ooh, we're getting a bunch of college people that are bolstering our programs. And so maybe we should reinvest in them as well. So I think just learning about what each publisher in your country is doing, if they're already doing anything on the grassroots level, if they are interested in education, if they're interested in supporting future content creators, I think understanding what those motivations are for your country will be really helpful. And for us, thankfully, we were able to connect the successful grassroots events to the educational component as well, and figure out if it was sustainable for collegiate to be a path to professional play. And that's something that we're continuing to discuss all the time, just to see how we can get publishers on board moving forward.
Much. That is something that I think absolutely speaks to sort of the differences that schools that are less developed, looking to create those type of pathways, that they definitely can learn from. YJ or Jim, do you have also any advice in terms of what you could offer to aspiring colleges that are looking to create these programs, or even just students themselves looking to create something small and grassroots and student-led as they look to North America as a possible model? But again, it's not the only model, but they are definitely looking to North America as a path.
YJ, if you want to go first, go for it.
Actually, could I offer it to you, Jim?
Sure. So I'd say advice, and actually, because we touched on it, and I forgot to answer an earlier question about the size difference in schools. I think that's relevant here. it is a double-edged sword to have a large school versus a smaller school, because a UCI or a Maryville can go, hey, we're going to give you scholarships as part of the esports, playing on our esports team. And for a school the size of USC with the jump in tuition, it's not really something that we can offer, at least currently. And we also, because of our size, we have a very robust traditional sports ecosystem. And so when we talk about sponsorships, it's like, yeah, that's great. You have an esports program, but I was kind of looking to promote with the football team, because obviously the number of eyeballs on football or basketball is much, much greater. I think the opportunity for students in other schools is definitely to do some grassroots stuff, but keep it manageable. Don't overextend yourself. That's something we saw quickly with the PACU. We had very, I'd say at the time it seemed like it was doable. And then when we realized and to Kathy's point, the administration who have full-time jobs and are doing this on the side for the most part, not getting paid for it, and the students who are free labor, they have to carry the entire load. So the more you try to up your game, if you will, on how you're presenting your program and the organization, the more you start to realize without any sort of infrastructure or investment from the administration or the school, you and the students will run out of gas pretty quickly. Like, everyone's enthusiastic in August and September when school starts back up. When you get to midterms, they're less engaged. When you have a couple of really big events that a lot of people put a lot of time into, people kind of are burnt out by the end of that semester, into that school year. So it's really about how do we get some sustainable investment and sustainable resource on college campuses that can not only support these activities, but also be knowledge transfers. Because I find out as a faculty member, when a group of awesome students that really took the ball and ran with it for a school year, when they graduate, you're rebooting. And it's like, well, where are all the files? Where's the bathroom? Where are those video files, the VODs from this last year? And you're like, I didn't do any of that stuff. The students all did that stuff. Can you call them while they're working at fill in the blank company? And it's like, oh, okay. So you're reinventing stuff a lot, and it's not the most efficient process. So it would be great to have it doesn't take a lot, but just a small amount of administrative infrastructure to just keep the lights on, run some of these events and these streams, and to promote.
Great. And YJ, any comments on that one?
Yeah, I definitely agree to what Jim and Kathy said on a lot of the points that they've spoken regarding this issue. I think one of the things that help out so much when you're starting out from a smaller school is showing hard data to really getting the admins onto your side so that they could show support. Show them some planned programs that you've seen other universities or other programs do that are scaled to your size and that are attainable with what manpower or horsepower it is that you have, so that they can't refuse your offer. As Jim said, I think that reinventing the wheel with training new people is always a struggle. Whenever you have someone who just really knows everything about the nitty-gritty about the industry, that unfortunately, it's their time to graduate. I think that always being so willing to reach out to either the graduates from your own program or to local universities that are doing similar things that you want to try to do at your own school, reach out. You never know. They'll be more than happy to, hand over the mantle over to someone who is young, driven, hungry to really grow this industry, because everyone that's worked on it, we really want to continue to see it grow and expand further.
Okay, great. Absolutely. YJ, I wanted to actually, ask you a question. So when we had the partnership between University of Hawaii at Manoa and the Overwatch League, we had a number of folks do workshops with our students. And I think for our students, one thing that they found very, very helpful and really, really quite eye-opening were discussions around how to get into the industry. And so for some of the Overwatch crew that spoke to our students, something that was quite surprising for them was that they didn't need to come prepared knowing everything at first. And I think for a lot of students, that was sort of the assumption that they needed to be aware of operations, competition, scheduling, formatting, that they needed to be just fully aware of how things ran before they could get a job. And what we found out, of course, is that with the Overwatch crew that came to Honolulu, is that really the whole crew that came from a whole diverse set of backgrounds that really weren't not necessarily a part of the games industry. And so, one question that I would like to ask you, YJ, is, what do you see the industry looking for when they're looking to hire young adults out of college, what kind of skill sets are they looking for? What kind of literacies are they looking for? What is that thing that makes somebody employable? Again, for an industry that, as I mentioned before, is quite black box and quite mysterious. What would you say to that?
Regarding the students and all of the Blizzard side employees that came to speak in panels with them that were open discussion, I think that just the eye-opening part was the willingness and the communication that we provided to them. I feel as though, like you said, it is a very black box where you're not sure what it is that you quite need to get into the industry. That seems so elusive. But I think for right now, the industry leaders are looking for people with experience in any regard of what it is that you're doing. So let's say you're interested in social media and marketing, and there's a local team for like esports that's run by a uni or by a couple towns away, or that's like, close enough, and they don't have a person working on social media, offer to take charge. They would be probably more than happy to have someone who looks at what other companies are doing that inspires you, spin your own style on it. That direct experience, the willingness to learn, and getting integrated with the community is really the first step in getting started. You have no idea where that eagerness or willingness will get you later on. Another point that I would like to make, that's evident with this call, is that the esports market is really going global. So if you are able to speak more than one language, I think it definitely is a huge asset in what you could bring to any team. Learn the lingo used in the industry that you want to get involved with. I speak both like English and Korean, making it so that they don't have to bring a translator for some events if we do have a lot of Korean players or staff that come out. So that definitely helps a bit. But it's not the only one. Some other attributes that companies are looking for is flexibility, for being hungry to ask questions, wanting to learn more about the industry, owning up to mistakes if you do happen to make any, and in a blink of an eye, you'll be sure to grow into a valuable addition to any team that you're willing to join.
It's a great point you bring up, YJ, and that point is being bilingual. And that was something that I did not anticipate as being something so important when I had the Overwatch League come to Hawaii, because, for some of our students, they suddenly found themselves as being needed or being useful when the Overwatch League came last year, because they could do a bit of translation work because they studied Korean. And of course, they could speak also Chinese or Japanese. And so I really appreciate that point that you make, YJ, is that, again, considering the audience in the APRU, that, we're talking about a coalition of universities and countries that have a lot of bilingual speakers, and English being, of course, probably a dominant one, but also Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, the list goes on. And so I think, that is a great point, is that being able to be culturally aware, culturally sensitive, being bilingual and being flexible and global in your thinking is probably a very, very important thing to have. And that's a great point. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I wanted to go back to one of the questions here that was posted. I think that's a very important question that I think many panels, when it comes to esports, really has to cover, this idea of bad behavior. And so the question here, and I'll read it again verbatim: esports, since it's very different than traditional sports, in what ways can we avoid some of the quote unquote bad behavior that is often encouraged in traditional sports, but also aren't in other other dangers that are not present in traditional sports? So, I think right here, this idea of bad behavior, and this person says, how do we avoid putting students and organizations at risk? So we know that games and esports has a dark reputation for harassment, misogyny, sexism, racism, and esports, again, is no different. And we also see it in smaller communities, and also even on our college campuses. I think this is a great question, because this is a question that I think all directors, all faculty and administrators want to understand. In what way can we address this bad behavior when it comes to esports, and especially when it happens on our college campuses, in which we, in collegiate esports, are seeking to get a greater diversity of students into our programs? And so, I'd like to open up that question. In what way do we address this this bad behavior that we do see in the gaming industry, especially in our college campuses, going back to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a tough one for us when we first started Trojan Esports, and still to this day, the students who play and are part of TES administration, they have to sign a code of conduct document that basically outlines like whether you're representing the school with your gamer tag or not. As long as you're part of the organization, you're not allowed to. I can't rattle it off the top of my head, but basically you got to not be a jerk. You can't engage in that behavior while you're at USC and part of this group. If you want to go to USC and not be part of this group and not compete on behalf of the school, knock yourself out. I mean, obviously we don't advocate that, but we definitely want to do our part to make sure kind of our backyard is cleaned up. The other thing, I think the only other thing we can control is moderation on matches, making sure that we have a zero tolerance policy on certain types of trash talking, which is always tough because when you're dealing with school versus school and competition, there's that gray kind of shady line on like what's acceptable with like go Trojans and like, you suck Bruins. And it's like, well, that doesn't feel right. But it's one of those things where we know it when we see it, but it's still kind of a loose definition of what's appropriate and what's not. I would say, and loose in some cases. Trust me, there's other stuff that's clearly we're not going to do that. There at least have been, I think, 2 or 3 players since we started that were actually flagged or banned by the publisher. The publisher notified us and we kicked them off out of the organization. Just because if you're engaging in behavior that's bad enough to get you, removed temporarily or permanently from the game, you switching your gamer tag to a new one to come back to play isn't really going to help. We just don't want the behavior nearby us.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely. Kathy, I mean, what would you say to that question about this idea of bad behavior?
Yeah, I think Jim brought up a lot of great ideas in terms of reactive measures that we can take when these things happen on our campuses. And I think most of the work that I've engaged in has actually been on the other side, which is preventative. And I think something that was very important, especially on a college campus, which we see at higher education oftentimes is like being at the forefront of innovation and, culture and teaching the next generation. And I think that puts us in a really unique and great spot to address these issues before they happen, before they become ingrained into player behavior, and also exploring what like the deeper reasonings might be behind it all. So I think for us, it would be things like, okay, why are people being sexist online? Do they not understand that the things that they're saying are harmful? Is this the type of language that they grew up with in high school and even younger? If so, how do we have like mature conversations where we treat like children and people that are growing up and also college students as adults basically, and like respect their perspective, but also present all the information that can kind of help change that perspective and make them understand without having to get, the punishment out necessarily. And I think code of conducts are a great way to do that. At UCI, for example, we also ran a lot of youth programs. So I think working with youth, having those type of activities, having these conversations early has been super helpful in kind of shifting the mindsets that typically contribute to toxicity down the road. And also just thinking about like, what are ways that you can support your campus community for the groups that aren't very involved in gaming because of all the barriers. Maybe it's toxicity, maybe it's a bad negative experience in the past. How do you reach out to them and make sure they know they're welcome in your club, at your program? Even if they don't see themselves represented necessarily in all of those activities, how can we move toward a place where it feels better?
Great points. And then YJ, how about yourself?
Yeah, as Jim and Kathy has said very well, I think that code of conducts work amazing to help students just get a better frame set going into this new environment that there's going to be different standards that are introduced to them. One other thing that my university did was we also had GPA minimums on those contracts that we had players sign. We made sure they were performing well in their studies so that they were able to compete, as well as we had our managers, like for our teams, regularly check in with the students, just see how they're doing emotionally, mentally. I sometimes really felt that a lot of the times, sometimes when people engage in those negative or toxic behaviors, like Kathy mentioned, a lot of them could be avoided if you show that there are other humans that really, interact with you on a deeper level, that really care, and that, they would be disappointed if you would engage in behaviors like that. So I think that really helped for our university overall. But within our internal staff, we also had bi-yearly summits filled with panels that focus on topics such as mental health, DE&I trainings, and really helped to bring in all the internal officers, directors, and everyone involved that would help out at our events or just our day-to-day planning. And I think that it helped our environment just be such a positive place that throughout the years, I've just seen more and more minorities and women just join in on our program, and it's made me so happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are really actually amazing points that need to be made, because I think for the APRU audience that are outside of North America, some of this may seem unfamiliar, this discussion around inclusion, diversity, and equity, because within the North American landscape, we're talking about a student body that often is very diverse, right? That represents cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, religions that are not homogenous. And I think for a lot of students that come into a esports club, an arena, or a gaming club itself, it may be one of the first times or the very early times for themselves in which they interact with students that they never have interacted with before. It could be the first time that they actually talk to a student who may be LGBTQ, who may be gay, queer, or lesbian. And, I think that speaks to the power and the importance of why college esports is so important, is because I think college esports reflects the goals of higher education, and we want these students to interact with students that are different from them, and to also try to be in the same space with them and to talk with them. And games become sort of this conduit in which conversations can spring up around. And I think that really offers an important perspective on this itself. Now, we are at the end of the hour. I would like to thank all our panelists for coming and talking about these really important themes and topics. Once again, those themes being, the origins of college esports, where it's going, its connection to industry, and some of the goals and outcomes that we want as educators and administrators for our students. And I think number two, which was an important theme that I saw repeated over and over again in some way or another, is the geography of place and space in esports, that each of our schools really represent a very unique culture. It's not, sometimes it's almost useless to talk about esports as a abstract, or to talk about global esports as this entity that exists in the clouds. It really doesn't. It's grounded in our realities, our communities. Esports in Hawaii is going to be very different from esports in Texas, in California, or in Korea, or in Japan. And so I really do appreciate the APRU bringing us together to get to talk about this and to share these ideas. And then finally, I think, as we said before, discussing topics around diversity, inclusion, and equity is something that I hope that other schools in the APRU also take seriously as they begin their programs, because I think North America has some very good examples of at least beginning those conversations as we move forward. And with that, I would like to end it and thank everybody for all this, and take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Kabeloa, for guiding us through an interesting conversation on the way forward for college esports. We hope to take these lessons with us as we continue to innovate and grow. How's everyone doing? Everyone having a good time at the APRU Metagame Conference? Me too, me too. We would now like to invite Professor Patrick Williams to moderate our final panel of the day, titled Gamification of Social Well-Being. Patrick Williams is an associate professor of sociology at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. He currently co-chairs the APRU Games and Esports Researching Work Group. His current research focuses on the significance of DIY culture and identity in the growth of esports in Singapore. Joining us virtually are Professor Tion Ko Hui Lian from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, Mr. Ian Lam Tze Hang from Salix Education and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and lastly, Dr. Zhao Yupei from Zhejiang University. Again, to access the Q&A session for this panel, simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during the discussion. Professor Williams, the stage is yours.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. Is it time? Oh, is it time for me to start? Okay, sorry. Well, welcome everyone to the third panel on gamification and social well-being. I'm Prof. Patrick Williams. I'm a cultural sociologist and a social psychologist who's been studying youth cultures, digital technologies, and games, both tabletop as well as MMOs and now esports for about 20 years. I'm also the chair of the APRU Games and Esports Research Working Group, which is a new initiative that we've just started up in 2022, and hopefully we'll be hearing, or you'll be hearing more about in the future. I just want to open with a couple of remarks on today's topic about gamification and social well-being. So if you can switch to the next slide, please. We've been learning a lot and discussing this idea of metaverse today, and I find myself being quite excited about the potential to develop a host of new virtual, augmented, and mixed reality platforms for people around the world. I think these platforms are going to be oriented toward a variety of social and cultural needs and interests. And I think people are going to be able to interact with new environments, with new forms of digital content, and with each other in ways that will be in some ways recognizable, but in other ways new. And it seems obvious that digital games and gamification processes are going to be a major part of this evolution, given their broad appeal and their application in everyday life these days. But with the gamification of everyday life, it means that we need to continue to think critically about and assess gamification itself as a widespread contemporary phenomenon. Next slide, please. So gamification has had a clear impact already in certain areas, for example, education and work and productivity, the areas in green. But gamification, as well as serious games, are also quickly growing in other areas of social life. So the areas in blue, whether we're talking about marketing, science and innovation, health and well-being, or sustainability. And I think we also need to recognize that gamification itself is a process. So this area on the right side in the cream or yellow color, that involves at least three areas. First are both the technological affordances of platforms, as well as the personal and the motivational disposition of users involved in gamification. Second are the game or gamified practices that are created, as well as the experiences of users. And third are the outcomes of those practices and experiences. So what kinds of behaviors are being influenced or being affected? And I think when we think about gamification in this way, by breaking out a lot of its component parts and processes, we can start to ask questions. So for example, is gamification good or bad? Or is that too simple a question? Will gamification be something that's guided and controlled by major profit-oriented industries, or by well-meaning educators, or by others? Will it improve educational outcomes for digital natives? But what about for others who may be in more precarious or disadvantaged positions? Will gamification make us healthier? Will it make us more productive or more innovative? Will it make us more knowledgeable, or will it just make us better consumers? I think these are some of the important questions that I believe we'll be able to learn something about from our panelists today. The next slide will give us an introduction to those speakers. So next slide, please. And I would like if we could just briefly have each of the speakers quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll launch into the panel itself. Mr. Lam, could you introduce yourself first?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. So my name is Ian. I'm from the Division of Integrative System and Design, ISD department from the UST, HKUST. So I'm actually the CEO and founder of Decentralized Education. So to talk about a little bit of myself, I was actually born and raised in Hong Kong with a severe special education needs. So being different in a conventional classroom context, I've suffered quite a lot. So it's actually helped me to have this kind of entrepreneurial mindset and to help the world with especially with someone who are suffering from poverty and special education needs.
Thanks.
Thank you for
and second, we have Prof. Dion Go. If you could introduce yourself quickly.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Good morning, everybody, or good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Dion Go from Nanyang Technological University. I'm from the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information. I started off with computer science, and that's where my PhD was. But I've since moved into more user-oriented studies where I focus on gamification techniques as well as designing serious games for different kinds of tasks, such as motivating behavior change. And so today I'll be speaking on one of these projects, and hopefully, this is something that we can learn from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, we have Prof. Zhao Yupei. If you could just introduce yourself quickly as well.
Okay, hi guys, my name is Yupei Zhao. I'm from the College of Media and International Culture in Zhejiang University based in Hangzhou. And also I'm the director of the VR and the Digital Cultural Research Center. And my research particularly focused on esports and the digital humans at this moment. So yeah, that's mine. I'm also live in Metaverse right now.
Great. Thanks very much. Well, I'd like to just jump right into the panel, and each speaker will have about 7 or 8 minutes to speak. So Mr. Lam, Ian, if you would like to go first, thank you very much.
Okay. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me to this event. So I was actually very flattered to be able to join this meeting and conference. So actually, I was born and raised in Hong Kong with a severe special education needs, as I've mentioned. So during the process of growing up, I have encountered severe discrimination and bullying, and with a strong sense of determination persistent. Thereafter, I was managed to enter into one of the best universities in Hong Kong, Hong Kong U, despite my personal struggle and learning difficulties. So upon admission to Hong Kong U, I realized the importance of equal opportunity in education, and hence I'm determined to make a difference by helping students with and students who have a similar background as I did. So I started my business in a very humble place, which is a subdivided unit in Hong Kong. For those who are not from Hong Kong, you may not heard of this concept of Tong Fong. Tong Fong basically is divide a flat into multiple suites, and people were going to live in it. Okay, with many with a very small place and very confined area. So I actually started in this kind of place in Kennedy Town, where I witnessed the needs of SEN students and the family. Especially, I also witnessed someone who actually is SEN and they are also suffering from poverty. So, which made me more determined to serve the disadvantaged and the underprivileged. So when I was young, I was actually requested to see language therapists in primary school, due to the fact that I couldn't even speak. I go to school by bus in Cantonese, Currently, I'm being able to speak in English fluently, and also with proficiency in 6 languages, including Spanish, Portuguese, and a little bit of French. I think this is actually a miracle, and I think that this miracle could actually be inherited and actually be passed on to the next generation and to someone actually suffering from similar background as well. So this gaming conference is actually not very unfamiliar for me, because before my graduation, I was actually got an offer from Tencent China. It's actually from the gaming department of Tencent. I was really, I was really into the esports tournaments and the esports community back then. Actually, I was actually an offer with a job with potential salary of more than 1 million RMB in such a company. But I was very tempted by the offer, but I decided to give up pursuing the money, the power, and in this multinational company, try my very best in helping the disadvantaged in a very humble place, and started this company with my former students while studying in UST for my master's degree in technological leadership and entrepreneurship, which is a new master program offered by the ISD department in UST, which incorporate MBA teachings with engineering training. So my company is currently one of the industry-leading SEN gamification specialists in Hong Kong, partnering with universities and gamification experts to provide SEN-tailored education service in local schools and educational institutes by using the latest technology of VR and NFT in the education sector. So my company is positioned as a leading edtech pioneer in the metaverse. So I think this is a very good chance to share with you guys a little bit about how my company is doing recently. So my company is launched not too far away. My company just started last year. But in this year, I have seen a lot of needs from the society, especially during the pandemic, during the COVID-19. I've seen that many students, especially those who suffer from SEN and those who suffer from poverty, in a traditional classroom context, which just recently turned into a Zoom context, I've seen that the situation have deteriorated. The learning condition, the way the student learn, and learning motivation, everything, have changed during the pandemic. So coupled with the pandemic, with my passion to help the SEN, I really see that the trend and the use of VR technology and immersive technology could be the future to help students from different kind of social difficulties and disabilities. Yeah. So I think this is pretty much my first presentation of my little bit of my background and my company. So I'll pass the time to Professor Patrick.
Yes, thank you very much, Ian. That's a nice introduction. I'd like to pass over now to Prof. Dion Go and ask him to speak quickly about what he's been doing in terms of gamification and serious games. Dion.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. So we'll be having the slides. Can we have the first slide? Okay, great. So this is my talk. I'll be discussing a research project in which we develop a game to teach children social skills, and it's co-designed. So the children also help to create the game for us. Next slide, please. We have the next slide. I'm not seeing that. Sorry, but okay. Anyway, just a quick introduction. So social skills are pretty important. They are viewed as behaviors that an individual could use to perform competently in different social tasks. So, for example, social skills could involve verbal and non-verbal communication, gestures, body language, and personal appearance. And what we find is that children with social skills are able to acquire and maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships. They can gain peer acceptance, they make friends. So all in all, children with good social skills would likely have a good life trajectory. Could you have the next slide? So typically when social skills are conducted, we adopt what's known as the traditional approach, where it's delivered in person. And you can see here there's some characteristics. Basically, trainers need to be trained. The whole process could be time consuming, and children need to be suitably engaged. So could we have the next slide? So in the next few slides, I would like to show you some examples of activities taken from a training manual used to teach children social skills. And this manual was developed by collaborators who are school psychology researchers. Okay, so the first slide here shows teachers shown how to identify feelings. The second slide shows how to identify anger feelings specifically. And the final slide presents scenarios for children to discuss problematic social situations and how to handle them. Okay, so for this research, what we wanted to do was to see if we could use games to teach social skills to children. And we used a social skills training manual and adapted it to a game-based format. And we also wanted to adopt a child-centered design approach. That means creating a game for children that's co-developed by children. Could you have the next slide? The next slide. Yes, so I already talked about this, so could you have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is the learning content. It consists of 7 modules, and these modules teach a wide range of skills. For example, understanding feelings, anger coping techniques, and social cognitive skills. So the next slide. So this is our methodology. It comprises 4 steps, and I'll quickly go over these steps in the next slides. So the first step was to design an initial game consisting of just the first module. We decided that it would be a role-playing adventure game where the player goes on a quest to help the friends acquire social skills. And the game is actually is divided into 7 modules shown in the previous slide. And each mission will correspond to different learning materials from the module. And then within each mission, we have different quests, which are activities related to the modules. And there's also a reflection journal where players can jot down notes about the learning points as they accomplish the quest and the various missions. So next slide. So for this initial game prototype, we had an introductory movie, and we implemented the first mission, which was identification of feelings. And the learning objectives were to gain self-awareness and to identify a range of human emotions in the player as well as in others. So there is an introductory movie, and then the player can select an avatar. And then in the first mission, the player goes to this mystical island where the player meets friends, enemies, negotiate various obstacles, and learn lessons on social skills development. And you can see on the right slide here is an example of a game in the first mission where players have to sort feelings into pleasant and unpleasant feelings. And these are bears that actually move around, and the players have to catch the bears and sort them into pleasant and unpleasant feelings. Next slide. Okay, so after completing this initial mission, what we did then was to get children to help co-design the remaining missions and the associated quests. So we adopted a participatory game design methodology involving 6 boys and 6 girls, so total 12 children that worked with us for over a month. Next slide. And the children were divided into mixed gender teams, and they used low fidelity prototyping. That means just good old stationery to help draw and sketch out the different quests and missions. Next slide. So you can see here, first of all, there was a briefing session. Then the children play tested the game. And then you can see the children worked in teams to co-design the different quests and missions. And then finally, at the bottom right, the children presented their ideas where the research team, basically picked the best ones for further development. Next slide. Okay, so here are some examples of the designs and how they were actually translated into the game. So the first one showed a storyboard where the player arrives at a farm of potatoes, and the potatoes want the player to help the angry potato friends become happy. So it's like a whack-a-mole game. The player was supposed to, touch the potatoes that were angry and leave the happy ones alone. And by touching the angry potatoes, they became happy. Okay, next slide. So this was another example storyboard that we adopted. So this scenario is about a player who was trying to cross the river, but the bridge collapsed. But then, so the player can't get across. So suddenly a frog called Jumpy appears and offers to help the player cross the river if the player practices deep breathing techniques. And so after practicing the deep breathing techniques and playing a memory game, the frog will then transport the player across the river. Next slide. Now, there were also storyboards that were rejected, especially those that were violent. So this was an example of rejected storyboard here. Some children decided to have a game based on grenades and cannonballs. So pretty violent, and we did not adopt this because we actually want to teach pro-social behavior, not violence and bombs, grenades, and such. Okay, so that's, can we have the next slide? Okay, so this is the full game implementation. So we have a backstory that introduces the mission. Okay, next slide. And then we have seven missions in total. So the first one I would describe previously, which was identification of feelings. The one here in mission 2, what children did was to learn feelings that can have different levels of intensity from moderate to severe. And this mission especially focused on exploring how to manage angry feelings. So let's go to the next slides because my time is running out. Mission 3 and 4 taught children how to manage their anger. Mission 5 taught children about empathy. That means understanding that other people have feelings as well. Next slide. Mission 6 basically presented an anger management plan. And mission 7 was basically an integrative session where children put together everything they have learned. And then we had a concluding movie. Okay, next slide. Then we had an evaluation where we had 72 children in experimental group to play the game. 76 was in a control group that did not. And then we wanted to see whether the game was effective in acquiring social skills and whether children wanted to play the game in the future and whether they found it fun. Next slide. And so, we were happy to see that the game called Social Drone was an effective tool to teach children social skills. They enjoyed the game, and they also reported wanting to play the game in the future. And in my final slide, the conclusion here, could have the last slide, was that, we were gratified to see that the game showed potential in helping children acquire social skills. And also this user design centered approach, although challenging, time consuming, we found was very important in creating a successful game. And the final conclusion was that we hope that this research added to the literature by providing an Asian perspective. So thank you very much.
Wow, thank you. That was a lot of very interesting slides and images and going over the details of this particular game that you created. And I look forward to talking to you a bit more about it in a few moments. First, we want to hear from Prof. Upe about what she's doing. Please.
Okay, it's my turn. Thank you, Patrick. Okay. So today I would like to demonstrate one of my ongoing projects about the gaming. That is the last slide. Go for the first one, yeah. My topic concentrates on the gamification and well-being of the virtual uploader on Bilibili. Bilibili is the largest popular media platforms right now in China. And also that is also, there are large population of the ACG people lived and working and experience there. So my topic concentrate on this kind of new people who are, which I called AI generation. So next slide. Okay, so you can figure out easily from my slide what I would like to demonstrate, who are my research target. So the virtual idols right now created through this kind of singing voices software. It's a synthesizer software such as the Wang. Some of them perform at the stage projection in live concert. And the creators first samples voices of the real singers, voice actors from the voice back, and use this kind of software to synthesize the singing by entering the lyrics and the melodies, or speech by entering the scripts. And comparing with this kind of VCLOPs, the virtual upload is driven by the motion capture. So 2D or 3D virtual characters generated by capture with the live streamers' performances or movements or facial expressions, so that we can fully support the live interactions with viewers. And also the identity of the live streamers is disclosed. So that is the really important thing in terms of that industry. Next slide. And why it is very important for this whole field that I am and with my team to concentrate on, because to better understand the social technological phenomenon of the VOps, we concentrate on the gamification of the VOps, because there are a large number of the VOps construct their roles based on their actual selves, exploring their own potential and their own discovered selves by experimentally with the virtual characters. So from this slide, you can easily to figure out there's an increasing number of the VOps, in particular during the lockdown, during the pandemic. And the number of the paid viewers and the total number of the bullet screens of the VOps on Bilibili also showed a steady increase over time. Next slide. So our research concentrate on, for instance, you can just keep thinking. Yeah, thank you. So we try to employ the interview and also the online observation to focus on explore what is the power relations of the virtual identity and the actual identity, and also what will bring to this generation by this new ways of being, what's the possibility for them, and what is the risk might arise from. So comparing with the VCLOPs and with the predefined action, so VOps combine the real people with image and are able to communicate directly and emotionally with the audiences in the form of avatars. And also from the point of view, the VOps can, their live practice have similarities with the simulating changes in the context of the AI. So there's ongoing debate what is real, right? But real here is this constructed in this kind of surrealism, and also the boundaries between the virtual and the real can be redefined in this kind of new practice. And also we need to rethink about the definition of person, self, and other in VR, and also what is the ethical challenges that might rise from the changing pattern of the human media interaction. Next slide. So firstly, as VR might be a new trend of the celebrity culture in the digital future. However, limited digital support, like the content made by the motion capture, empower the youth to reflect on their social values and beliefs, takes on the new subjectivity and explore the previous experienced ways of being. And the second is, meanwhile, the risk posed by the digital-enabled self-barrels from fragmentation to harmonious, particularly the virtual-dominated self of authenticity, might have put the unconscious process of self in danger, which requires a high level of the self-management between the virtual and actual for this kind of VOps. The third is the two foundations pattern of self-becoming and self-being pave the way for understanding the transformation, self-transformative, or any psychological possibility disclosed by this virtual world. And the last is our study casts light on the virtual environment as technology can be useful in reframing some philosophical questions, because we concern a lot on identity, subjectivity, self-determination, or anything related to the simulated process. So what is the possibility and what is the risk? Next slide. So by examining the inner self of VOps, we found that the virtual world inherently encourage the user to embrace what could be over what is. So which give them more opportunity to explore who they are, who could be themselves, and their relationships between the virtual cannot solely concerned with their social desire or effect. And their technological mediated experience also constitutes threats to well-being and also even for their survival of this generation. So this digital technology not only encourage mode of thinking that no longer exclusively focus on the actuality, but also they can be understood granting the experience, access to artificial supplementary bodies or subjectivity that existed simultaneously with our actual ones. So the VOps can engage in the creative activities to encourage the reflection about their actual self. And also the way can stimulate and guide changes in the structure of human experience and subjectivities. That is our horizons that could be finalized in the future or in this kind of metaverse. Next slide. Okay, so simultaneously, we also figure out that pose the threats to well-being to this kind of VOps. Because first, they can be doxed by fans, and secondly, there are some physical and mental fatigue, and also it could be easy to fragment themselves. So that is the risk that we have identified so far. The idea that the virtual can provide us with spaces that we can be ourselves, unconstrained by the limitation places upon us by our everyday existences, might exacerbate our alienation from our actual existence as well. So through this kind of escape into the virtual existences, into the events, rather than tackling, so the actual condition might motivate such as escape in the first place. So that is the risk as well. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. I almost finished. Yeah. Yeah, that's the risk I have just mentioned. Be boosted by fans, physical and mental fatigue, and also next, the fragmented self. Yeah. Yeah, that's my presentation I would like to demonstrate today. So all in all, in this digital age, being humans as ongoing process and open questions that cannot be satisfactorily answered or even be completely understood without taking into the consideration our relationship with the technological creation by both opportunity and risk. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you all for quite interesting. It's an interesting variety of statements, of course, all related to this idea of gamification. I guess if I'm going to start actually just by instead of waiting till the end to make a summary comment, I think I should make it now that one of the things I saw across this panel so far is that we're being asked to rethink in various ways human and digital interactions for well-being in various ways. And one of the just a generic question I have is, are we increasingly expecting digital technologies to help people with their own health and well-being instead of us as humans helping each other? I think it's a generic question that any of the three of you might be able to address through your own work. How are we, what responsibilities do we have as people to take care of each other versus the roles that these digital technologies are being expected to play in this area in the future? And I'll just open it up. If any of the three of you would like to start, feel free.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just break my idea. I think I've mentioned that before. It's a great opportunity for this AI generation to explore who they can be, and that arises the possibility and the risk as well. Yeah, so I'm keep online on this kind of groups people and trying to explore further what exactly they could finalize to become. Also, that's why how I define self-being and self-becoming. Yeah. Thank you, Yugong.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I'm tempted to say that there is a generational gap that younger people, might tend towards technologies and older people not. But I would think that that's too simplistic an argument. There could be various factors where some people might rely more on technology for their health, and some people might rely on other people. So it's a mix of maybe self-efficacy, personality, and so on. But ultimately, I feel, I'm a proponent of balance, that we can't just rely on technology alone to be responsible for our health. Neither can we always rely on people because they may not be available or may not be able to give us good information. So I think it's really the responsibility is to the individual to decide on the right balance. How much should we rely on technology and how much should we rely on people? And that also maybe is determined by factors such as the person's ability, technological ability, the ability to discern accurate information, and the social circle that he or she is situated in. So I think it's a complex question actually to answer.
Ian, do you have a response to this?
Well, thank you very much for asking me. Well, I think we're definitely living in a digital era, especially coupled with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemics. Much has changed during the pandemic, especially when it comes to education and when it comes to teaching students with special needs, including special education needs or disabilities. In such a context, many students are being alienated, because they cannot just simply catch up with the rest of the class. So I think we should definitely utilize the use of technology, education technology to help students and also to help each other. So I think it's of utmost and paramount importance that as education entrepreneurs and as the educators, I think we have the obligation to help students with disabilities using latest technology, including immersive technology. I think Zoom have a very good example of putting people together. But the thing is, as educators, we often think of how can we improve the learning experience, how to care and cater to the needs of special minorities and special groups of students as well. So this is actually what is always in my mind.
Yeah, and that raises a very good point that maybe I could just follow up with you for just one more minute. So how do we nurture and support people who may not have equal access to some of these technologies, access to these games, access to these platforms? I think we assume a lot that everyone has kind of access to these things, but I think that's not exactly true in all cases.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. At the very beginning of my company, I actually served in one of the poorest places in Hong Kong, where Hong Kong, often people would think Hong Kong is a very modernized city with good internet coverage. Everyone have a cell phone, everyone have an internet access. But actually, it's not the case. In some of the subdivided units, they don't even have an internet signal, a wide internet signal. So how do we care for those people? I think it is the time of talking about O2O integration, how to pull online content into offline, how to pull offline content into online content to help students with different needs. So I actually have one good example. Currently, I'm in Exhibition Center of Hong Kong, actually doing exhibition, showing parents and teachers how we are doing in helping this kind of student. One of the product that actually we have is we partner with a gamification expert in Hong Kong, Dr. Winnie Wang. They actually developed a box set, which is called Character Kits. So this box set is actually very special because it is paper-based box set, which incorporate different soft skills training, including acceptance, being friends, cooperations, and doing the right things. So these four elements, we deem these four element and components as one of the most important element for disabled students, because during the pandemic and during the course of doing online lessons, we often see that they're lagging behind, especially when it comes to the soft skills, the development of the soft skills. So in terms of this digital divide, I think using a brand new mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset, which incorporate offline element with online contents, I think it's of utmost imperative importance. So, so this is one of the example that we are doing. So I think I've answered the question. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting. I'd like to switch over to Dion. I noticed that your this game that you developed, and as you mentioned, has a user design centered approach. A lot of the gamification that we see going on is actually being generated by corporations and by major kind of profit-oriented companies. So I'm wondering how you feel about, or how you would compare maybe a user design centered approach versus maybe an educator design centered approach versus maybe a corporate design centered approach to gamification. Are there you know, what are the benefits and or the weaknesses or risks of any of these?
Okay, thanks, Patrick. It's an interesting question, challenging to answer, I think.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I think a user-centered design approach is critical, and I think that the methodology that I described, a participatory design where we have, the users become co-designers, is also practiced in industry. Where in commercial application development or commercial game development, users are also brought in. And I think that's something that we learn in school when I did computer science and human-computer interaction. Users are your clients, and you have to develop for them. So it's important whether you're in a research setting or in a commercial setting to include your end users. But of course, it's easier said than done. Like in my project, we had to involve school children. And school children were very difficult to recruit because they're minors. So parents may not want them to participate in our studies. School principals also were wary of us. So it's very important to actually have good context. So fortunately, one of our team members knew the principal in the school, and we managed to get the principal and convince the principal to allow us to conduct the study. You also mentioned an educator-centered approach. So I think that these things shouldn't be mutually exclusive. So when we talk about, let's say in the experience of my games, a serious game to teach children social skills. So you need to have a multidisciplinary approach. You need to have your game designers, your application developers. You need to have the psychologists who provide the material, the learning material, and then you need the artists and the designers to create an interesting application. So I think that the challenge in designing games is to have a multidisciplinary perspective and get the right people onto your team.
Okay, yes, well said. Thank you very much. And finally, I'd like to move over to Upei and ask, so this idea of these virtual avatars, these V-ups, is very fascinating. I first bumped into this myself in looking at K-pop and the group aespa, which was providing these virtual avatars that fans could download and this sort of thing. But do these avatars become kind of virtual? Are they expected to become virtual friends for their users? And what's the relationship that we're hoping that, are these avatars simply for users to play with themselves, or do we hope that these kind of avatars can end up serving certain functional roles, for example, helping young people manage their friendships or manage their own emotional well-being and that sort of thing?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a good question because based on our interview, we found that this kind of generation quite rely on their avatar by this kind of emoji type. even though right now we say there are different types of the event, right? But these groups of people, they are quite fancy and be obsessed with this kind of memoji. And also they have a very close relationship with the fans, with the users. However, their real identity, I mean the physical identity of this kind of VOps is disclosed. And also in particular for their fandom culture, it is not allowed to expose the identification of the VOps. And also for most of the interviewees we have collected, they will use different way to perform themselves. So some of them perform who they are in the physical world, but some of them perform that they would like to be. So they felt like it's a great way to explore more possibility to be a real herself or himself. Yeah, and also we can see the increasing population of this kind of VOps, even though in the previous time is a subculture in China, but because of the popularity of the metaverse, the concept or application, now we can see there is the increasing number of people who employ this kind of avatar in ultra realistic or hi-fi or even the emoji as the entry point to access the metaverse. So there's an increasing number of the people who play with that. And most of the interviewees from my research are students from high school or bachelor degree, and half them are full-time and half them are part-time. So they play for themselves. Yeah. Hope I have answered your question.
Yes, definitely. Now, I am cognizant of time, and I know that we need to end this session in the next, in about 3 minutes. So I just want to ask, maybe if each of you could take 1 minute to respond to this question of what would you say is the most significant challenge in promoting the gamification of well-being today? Is there any particular challenge that you think is that we need to face? Or if you have maybe the answer to that question, like how can we face the important challenges of gamification of social well-being? Maybe Ian, if you could go first.
I think one of the greatest challenge is that the society may not completely understand the real meaning of gamification. They may think that in a very traditional, and a Chinese traditional education mindset, some parents may think that game are not good because if the kids they're not doing well and in their education, they're not getting good grades, they should study instead of playing games. But I think the whole point of gamification is to incorporate education into games and to make the kid regain the love and passion for learning. So I think the major challenge is to educate, not just the kids, but the parents as well, the importance of gamification and the way gamification could be used to help students with special needs and who suffer from poverty. So I think this is one of the most difficult things that we need to do in terms of gamification.
Yeah. Yes, the generation gap is a very important point. Prof. Dion, do you have any closing ideas here?
Sure, Patrick. I think that the challenge here would be getting the word out about your application. I think there's so many applications out there. The competition is immense. You may have a great idea, it's theoretically driven, evidence based, but how do you actually cut through all your competitors and say, hey, I have a very good application and please use it because it's beneficial for you. So that's one of the challenges just that we actually face in the game that we develop. Because I'm a researcher, I'm not an entrepreneur, so I find it difficult. I develop something nice, good data, publications, but what next? So I think finding other collaborators who are able to take your game further is an important thing if you feel that many people will benefit. So what we did in the game that we developed, we approached in Singapore, we call it the Institute of Mental Health. So that's a government-run psychiatric hospital. They have clinics for children as well. So we talked to them about the game, and they were interested, and they took it up, evaluated the game, and then we actually got another grant to commercialize the game, and now it's being actually used as part of the therapy sessions. So actually getting partners who are maybe more entrepreneurial would be helpful if you are just focusing on your own research.
Very good point, and that's one of the things that I think even this conference is helping with, is putting together people from different kinds of backgrounds with different sorts of expertise together. But yeah, certainly finding those overlaps is key. Upe, any final thoughts?
Yeah. I think in the future, there will be definitely a large team of the digital humans coexisting side by side with us in life and work. And the risk from the risk for the memoji or ultra realistic avatars might be the opportunities for hi-fi avatar, because the highly accurate speech recognition and lip syncing with this kind of above more than 95% accuracy allow the digital human to have a smoother, more human-like interaction. So we can use this kind of advanced AI technology to keep bringing down the cost of building digital humans and improve their interaction with the real humans. So that might be a way to stop the fragmentation of being self as a hi-fi was. Right. And the digital people for the customer services will also continue to serve the metaverse with a better experience than pure graphic interface. Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Even the final responses you gave focused on the social, on the economic, as well as on the technological challenges that lay ahead of us. So I think this really shows the complex kind of situation that we're in as we move toward the metaverse in everyday life. I would like to thank the panelists for taking the time to share their knowledge with us on gamification and social well-being. Thank you very much, those of you who have joined us, and I will turn it back over to the main team now.
Thank you, Professor Williams, and all of our panelists. Now moving on to the next segment, the Metagame Conference also features a student digital art contest entitled Level Up Our World. I now welcome to the stage Mr. Jack Cheng, CEO and co-founder of Moon Lab, and also HKUST Master of Science FinTech alum, to share more information about the competition. Mr. Chen, please.
Okay, sure. Good morning, esteemed guests. I'm Jack, the CEO and co-founder of Moon Lab, and I'm also an HKUST alum. We at Moon Lab believe in the power of technology and working together with talented artists, and that's why we are very glad that we can sponsor this year's digital art competition, Level Up Our World, which offers students of the Asia Pacific a chance to influence the gaming industry and to shape an equitable, sustainable, and inclusive esports and gaming ecosystem in Asia. My company, Moon Lab, founded in 2021, and we are based in Hong Kong. Moon Lab is a startup that focuses on making blockchain technology massively adopted. We also have an NFT gallery that engages both artists and collectors all over the world. So hope you are one of them we can work together with in the near future. And the submission of deadline for the art contest is September 23rd, 2022, I'm sorry. Please visit our website that is shared in the chat box for more information. Thank you so much. Have a nice one.
Speaking of contests, I'd like to take a moment and speak about our own tournament. Starting at 1 p.m. right after the closing of this conference, we will feature the championship round of the APRU Rampage Invitational Tournament, featuring the best collegiate teams from around the world, from the University of British Columbia, the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Tecnológico de Monterrey, La Universidad de Chile, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and HKU Space. To introduce this tournament, we'd like to invite our partner, Mr. James Su, the president of Acer Gaming. Mr. Su, take it away, please.
James, good to go. James?
Yep. Hello, everyone. Welcome learning on Planet 9. I'm James Su. I'm the president of Acer Gaming. And I'm also a Johnson Assistant Professor from Friend University, College of Business in Taiwan. It's a great pleasure that Planet 9 can be part of this APRU. And also it's a great pleasure to see all the educators and the students from all over the world on this APRU. So in the next several minutes, I'm going to give you an overview on what Planet 9 is. Yeah. So Planet 9, talking about Planet 9, Asia, we have a plan to create a complete gaming ecosystem. So Asia, as you may know, is a PC brand. We have a Predator and Nitro brand designed for the gamers. So when we step into the esports and gaming sectors, very soon we found PC is just a small, tiny piece of the industry. So we understand tournament is the key. So therefore, we launched our own tournament, which is the Asia Pacific Predator League. This Predator League, we already have like more than 3 years with more than 25 countries. This year, the final will be in Japan. And we're also planning to expand the Predator League to Europe and to America, making it a global tournament. And in the past 2 years, we found that COVID-19 has huge impact to everyone, every business, and so is the esports industry. And therefore, we developed this Planet 9 platform in the goal to connect all the gamers and help them to evolve and battle together on this platform. Next slide, please. Yeah, so talking about Planet 9. Planet 9 is a next generation esports social platform. It has 3 major features and functions. There are community, tournament, and course. So for community, we help gamers to create or join gaming communities from around the world. They can create their own club, create their own team, and also communicate with each other and share information. So the goal is to help gamers to stay in touch. In the center part of Planet 9 is the tournament. So as we know, the tournament is the key for esports. So the mission for Planet 9 is to have all the gamers to easily participate in any tournament, and to have all the gamers to easily create and build their tournament. So we have many tools, which we will talk about later. And lastly, we also have course. Course, so this also has something with educational purpose. It's help any gamers can register as a mentor to teach fellow gamers on the skills, tricks, or aside from that, they can also share professional skills like how to do video editing, how to do digital editing, how to do graphic design. All these skills help not just only play game, but also on career development. So this is the 3 major pillars of Planet 9: community, tournament, and course. Next slide, please. Yeah, so talking about tournament. Tournament is the center part of the Planet 9. Since its inception 2 years ago, we already have like more than thousands of tournaments being hosted on Planet 9. And I would say 50% of the tournaments are educational, meaning it's hosted by student body, by student club, by schools or universities. I'll give you some examples here. We have tournaments that are being hosted by Ivy League schools and the UC system, University of California system. So like Harvard, Brown University, Columbia University, they already have tournaments on Planet 9 for 2 consecutive years. We also have tournaments called University Invitational that featuring schools, prestigious schools in UK. So that including like UCL, University College London, Imperial College, King's College. So that is example, Planet 9 being recognized by all the major prestigious universities. And we also welcome students from APRU and all over the world to join Planet 9, using Planet 9 to meet fellow gamers and to host tournament on Planet 9. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I give you some examples that Planet 9 can help gamers to easily manage tournament. So we have, so from left-hand side, you see we have bracket. So the bracket can help gamers to easily manage the tournament. So all the participants can easily see how the tournament is progressing, and they can easily to see the scores, rankings on from Planet 9. And lastly, we can see the ranking. So all these are just some simple tools. And on Planet 9, we have many more tools to help gamers and the tournament organizers to easily manage their tournament. Next slide, please. So last thing, at Planet 9, our goal is to help gamers to stay connected, to team up, to gear up, and to level up. So we provide all kinds of resources. It's all free to host tournament on Planet 9. So if you have any tournament, just feel free to bring it to us. And we also can help you, work with you to customize and make a flexible tournament together with you. So all the marketing resource or technical assistance, we have it all. So feel free to check out plan9.gg after this meeting today. So the last page, next one. Visit us at plan9.gg. So thank you very much, and we look forward to meet you at Planet 9. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing resource. Thank you to Mr. James Su, Planet 9, and Acer Gaming for your support of the students of APRU who are eager to share their talent in the international esports scene. Don't forget to catch the Rampage Invitational Tournament at delf.cyberport.hk. That's delf.cyberport.hk. We are nearing the end, friends. Thank you for joining us for the APRU Metagame Conference of 2022. It has been a pleasure as your host. Please give a round of virtual applause for all the speakers today for sharing their insights and expertise. We thank the partners of the APRU Metagame Conference, including Adidas, Moonlab, Next 10 Esports, Planet 9, and all of the APRU universities that led the APRU Esports program. We also thank all those who contributed to the development of this conference, including the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, National University of Singapore, Overwatch, Salux Education, Tecnológico de Monterrey, the University of British Columbia, the University of Hong Kong Space, the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Universidad de Chile, University of California, Los Angeles, the University of Southern California, Voice for Intercollegiate Esports, and finally, Zhejiang University. All the streaming content will be available at the DELF website. That's delf.cyberport.hk, as well as the HKUST and APRU's Facebook, YouTube, and WeChat. For details and more information about APRU and its eSport initiatives, please visit the website at apru.org. My name is Trevor Nguyen, and thanks for having me.
Finally, don't forget to share your experience at today's Metagame Conference on social media with hashtag DELF2022 and at APRU1997. Thank you for joining us today and have a lovely weekend.